I am so excited. Please welcome my guest for this evening, PapaMutt.
So you've got he stars in Dracula, Free Jack, right? The Edge. We're talking about Anthony Hopkins. Sorry, I was told to keep talking about this while you were doing your spiel. He was in Hitchcock. He was in Thor movies. Was he as Odin? By the way,
Yeah.
was he
Yep.
Odin? He was. I was right. He was an Odin. He was also in Transformers, and obviously every movie that involves like the Silence of the Lambs. I knew it. Anthony
He was
Hopkins
in Westworld.
Yes, I knew he was. Because when you think of Anthony Hopkins, the first thing you go to is just Silence of the Lambs, and that like melts your brain into like, oh, that's all he's in. Is the Silence of the Lambs, the Red Dragon? But no, he's in other stuff, and he's so good.
He's in a lot. He is really, honestly, like Hollywood royalty. Also, folks, let me know if the audio balancing is good. I've been having a little bit of trouble with it lately, so I think I might be a little bit higher up than PapaMutt right now. If it's egregious, let me know, and I'll shift stuff around.
I have raised the volume. Let me know what you think. Should I go into Discord and do it too?
I think we might be good now that I...
You're not even in Discord. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I sound good? Do I sound like a dream?
Let me double check. We're getting that you might be a little bit quiet, and that may or may not be a first.
I can keep... Yeah, weirdly, whenever I'm not on show, I'm like really quiet. Let me see if I can switch off to something else. Let me see if I can.
If I need to, what I can do is I can bring some levels up in OBS, and I can bring myself down. Please stand by, folks. Thanks for being a bit patient with us. Hope you're all having a fantastic evening.
Hello! 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 Can they hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If anything, your mic might be bringing you down because it detects you screaming.
Oh, hello.
Actually, one sec. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my levels.
Hello? Hello? Hi? Hello?
All right, let's try now. I've brought my levels down a bit, but brought them up in OBS.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello? How do I sound? Am I good? Am I a dreamboat?
I think you are indeed sounding like a dreamboat now. We're getting a lot of betters in chat. If things get screwy, folks, do let us know. But again, thank you so much for the feedback, and thank you for tuning in tonight. So, Papa, my guess is the vast majority of folks tuning in right now do know who you are, but for anyone who might not, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I am PapaMutt, your loud dog dad on Twitch. I am a VTuber. I'm a VTuber, furry, veteran. God dang, what else do you want to hear? What else do we know, eh? I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and I'm here as I've been invited by Jay, who pulled me by the scruff of my neck and said out loud, "You are coming onto my show." And I said, I don't know when I could be able to do that. And they continue to send me very mean DMs every single day saying, you don't come on the show or else. Very very just like mean things. Trust me, that happened for sure. And now I'm here. I've been threatened. Help.
Yep.
Help.
This show is absolutely under duress.
Which they're reprinting, by the way, but we'll get back to that later.
Oh, yes. Well, they reprint that basically every other set, though. That's nothing new.
I know. Sorry. I didn't want to... Not just duress. They're reprinting Thoughtseize, but sorry. I know. But that's a whole other thing. And prior to the duress of the show, we were talking about Anthony Hopkins. We were talking about how much Canada sucks. But then after that, Anthony Hopkins and how... whenever you hear his name, you don't know where he stars in. And so I did a cursory Google, and he stars in a lot of stuff. And I forgot how many good things he stars in. And he's amazing. My God.
Yeah, he's a really, really good actor. For those of you who might not be familiar, he's just like look up one of any of the many things that PapaMutt has already mentioned. He's most known for the line from Hannibal Lecter about a nice Chianti, and that's how we got onto that topic, because you were mentioning that you got yourself a nice bourbon, and then you said, I think, decanti, and I was like, well, there's decanter and then there's Chianti, so we had the combination of terms there. Like I said, a whole bunch happened in I think it was only 9 minutes or so that we were on the starting soon screen, so get used to that. But then again, if you've been to one of PapaMutt's streams, you know what you're getting into.
Don't worry, buddy. I've already warned Jay that I'm going to be doing all of the all of the conversations, like the faux pas, the no-nos in terms of interviews and talk shows and conversations. So I'm prepared to be probably the most boring guest you've ever had. I'm ready to just stare to the void and answer all your questions in single sentence, like word sentences. Are you ready for that?
I will do my best. Hey, I guess we just got into challenge mode then. So, Papa, what's your favorite color?
Red.
Incredible. What eloquence, what eloquence, what thoughtfulness. He's able to encapsulate so many things into a single word.
Oh my God, the amount of times that I've actually been in a situation where like there's just some people that just can't be in those shoes where they're unable to like, and that's not like enough to the fault of the person per se, but some people can't do the interview-esque aesthetic where they like go into the shoes of someone who's like being asked, like you see it on TV all the time where someone's being interviewed by the news and they're like, I saw him go down the street. He was being a meanie, and you're like, all right, cool, that's rad, love that for you. Like you see it all the time, so I'm not here to poke too much fun, but I am going to do a little bit of fun for Jay, make it a little harder for him. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, gotta keep me on my toes somehow, don't you?
I do. And the very fact that you thought I wouldn't do this. Here, I'm ready. Hit me with another one.
Tell me what you like about MMOs.
Oh, that's not fair. You know it. That's not fair. Oh,
Two can play at this game, Papa.
No, I was hoping you'd hit me with an easy. All right. How much time do you got? God,
I've got all night, buddy.
God dang. All right. Where do you want to start? You want to start with how I like about him or what I hate about him? Where do you want to go?
Actually, let's start chronologically. What was the first MMO you ever played?
Rewind time, I guess, if you want to like pull hairs. If we can pull hairs. There was like split hairs on there. There was like RuneScape, and there was like the smaller ones, quote unquote, compared to the big dogs now. You had RuneScape, you had some like fan-made ones back in the day, you had EverQuest, but I think the one that really got me into the genre, like really pulled me in, was original World of Warcraft was probably the progenitor of my love for MMORPGs. It is where it's where it all started, dog. It's where it began.
Do you remember what the first character you made is? Oh, and also we've got Frostbeard saying if you can get a little bit closer to the mic. But I'm
Frost! I'm doing my best over here! I'm a very animated person when I talk. I talk out with my hands and my mouth and my head and my face. So an issue that I've run into, and it's not just you, Jay, you're fantastic. You're amazing. I just move a lot when I talk. So there will be times where I move away from the microphone quite a bit because I'm very animated. I'm like a cartoon character. Which I
can't imagine you being like that.
I know, right?
I'm surprised you haven't been swinging your model all around. That if you do have the ability, I think you should have the ability to do that in VDO. You can do your normal shtick about zooming in and out, by the way.
Oh, no way. Let's go. Oh my God,
yes, here we go.
Yes, I have power. Well, like, okay. So now you give me so much power just now. Okay, so okay, so on that note, sorry, we're doing a side tangent side tangent to the side tangent. Sorry, we'll get back to the MMO thing in a second. I always find this interesting. You'll see it with VTubers in general. A lot of VTubers I've noticed like won't move their model. I'm very fortunate that I'm already a very like talkative person with the way my face moves, the way my body moves. But there's a lot of VTubers. You spend thousands and thousands of dollars, Jay, thousands of dollars, right? On or hundreds or whatever the case may be, right? You spend all this money on a wonderful model. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. It's got all these emotes, and you just don't use them. You just don't move the model. You just don't do the bleps or the things, right? Like, and I always found that interesting in VTubers, which is VTubing is in its essence acting, and it's always like frustrating to see these immaculate models just do this and just be stagnant and stationary, and it's frustrating to me. Sorry, that was a side tangent. I apologize.
No, you're good. And that it's, obviously people can do whatever they feel is best, what they're most comfortable with. But I can understand for someone who is so animated, that it's just that little bit of, you're not even like upset with them. It's like, I want you to do more. You have these tools. I want you to be able to use these amazing things that you have at your disposal. And that it's coming from a place of saying, you're already cool. You can do all these other cool things. Do you know this cool stuff over here?
You can be cooler. Like that's the thing. Like there are people in this industry of which I share with many a talented creator. There are thousands of amazing VTubers of which I share this amazing space with, and there are models comparatively so much better than I. Right? Like my model's fantastic. I love it. And there are models that are just better. There are just better models. But once after debut, after they show off their 25 different emotes, they never use them again. And it's frustrating because it's like just animate yourself. You're a goddamn cartoon character, effectively. Just move, wiggle around. That's my side tangent about animation and models and like that. I think stagnant models frustrate me to a great degree, so I do apologize for the side seg, but that's gonna happen a lot tonight, by the way.
Oh, don't worry. Like I said, I'm expecting. I'm expecting that. But yeah, so you said that you started out with RuneScape, but also World of Warcraft. Do you recall what the first character you made was?
Back in the day, I've been an undead warlock, and I eventually did a character change to a human warlock because my friends were playing as the Alliance. I was a huge warlock aficionado back in the day. I think a warlock always holds a place in my heart. For those of you who don't know, warlock is a class that specializes in damage over time effects, and they also summon little dudes to help them. Think of demons, like that. If you want to follow lower, sure. Demons, not aliens. That's fine. And that is what I played initially. And then I played WoW pretty religiously up until, I believe, Cataclysm, which is when Blizzard Entertainment / Activision, flubbed through the ball, so to speak, in the wrong end zone because they kind of messed up at Cataclysm. Then it became a hobby of I would quit an expansion and then come back for an expansion, play the first 2 months, quit, come back ad nauseum for the past X years.
I remember the Cataclysm was the one that featured the big fire dragon.
Yes, that featured Deathwing. The shtick behind it, you had 10 years, I believe, of World of Warcraft maps and lore and just amazing design. And then this big dragon comes and messes it all up. The lore, the storytelling, the raids, all of it was very mid. They messed up the maps that you fell in love with. It was honestly the worst. It was the turning point for Blizzard Entertainment, who just came off the heels of one of the best expansions of all time, Wrath of the Lich King.
Exactly. I haven't even played World of Warcraft, Papa, but I know that Wrath of the Lich King is the gold standard.
Yep. That is the last perfect expansion. Everything about Wrath, from its storytelling to its cutscenes to its questing to its zones, Wrath of the Lich King was unfortunately, and I love the World of Warcraft IP, the last good expansion. The moment that we entered Cataclysm was the moment that Blizzard Activision started to really flip-flop on where we are at in the current MMO genre. But as a huge fan of that, I played every expansion beyond that. I would hop in for a month, hop out, hop in, hop out. I did skip Warlords of Draenor because I was in the Navy, but I came back recently for Dragonflight, but not Jay. I want to be honest with you. I did not do it on my. I got bullied into this one. I got bullied into the most recent expansion. I had no desire to come back to this game. I was content playing New World until I died. That's not true, but that game sucks too. But that's a whole different story.
Was there anything in particular, in the heyday of it all? Is there something that you feel really stood out about World of Warcraft among all the others? That in a nutshell, I think one of the biggest things that World of Warcraft has always had going for it is sheerly numbers. That a MMORPG is a subset of services / products where the value of that product or service is directly proportional to the amount of people using it. That it's similar to social medias, where once you are really in on a certain game, MMO or social media platform, you're much less likely to move to another platform because your stuff's already there, your friends are already there, and everybody uprooting at the same time is going to be very difficult. It has to be a slow and steady thing, and you see that sort of with the rise of FF14, that it wasn't an overnight thing where it got to where it is. It's a combination of the other players in the space perhaps bungling a bit, World of Warcraft having the stumbles, and also the broader company problems, but we won't get into that.
And we're talking about gameplay right now. Yeah. Hey, yeah.
But that World of Warcraft obviously had a lot of things go right to get to where it was, and to be fair, where it still very much is. But is there anything that you feel, just even if it was then and maybe not now, that just about the experience of it all that really stuck with you?
I'm about to lay it all on the table right now. First and foremost, for those of you who do not know here listening in, World of Warcraft is based on Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, the RTS real-time strategy games that are third-person drop-down where you command units. And in those games, back in Blizzard's heyday, those games were so rich in story and lore and the amount of love that went behind every unit, every character. You really fell for these characters. So when you got introduced to the World of Warcraft, a expansion of these games, you were introduced effectively to that lore expound. Now there's an amazing world to discover, all these secrets, all these hidden things. And bear in mind, this game came out in like what, 2005, 2007, that area. So you are introduced at the adolescence of the internet. There aren't that many ways to optimize your character. There aren't ways for you to really emphasize your character, to optimize them, to look for secrets, and there's a quote that I believe came out from the Nintendo director many a year ago, where it's a side tangent, where gamers will optimize the fun of the games. They will. Every time. Every day of the week, gamers will ruin games by making it perfect. So when you're in the early days, World of Warcraft had the advantage of being early in the industry, where the internet didn't really have any knowledge on them. So you were able to play these games to your heart's content and never be short of a mystery, an adventure, an excitement, a new zone, a new little Easter egg, a new thing. Then you had different builds, different way to optimize your damage, but you didn't really know. You'd ask other people. And going full circle to your original Final Fantasy point, there are so many. The reason Final Fantasy does well is because the world feels alive. You see every other player. You see all of these players existing in the world, and it just feels alive. World of Warcraft, and this is another fault, I believe, of Cataclysm. Maybe it happened to Lich King, I forget. But the world is split asunder in the terms of a thing called zoning. Zoning basically effectively removes some players from other players to optimize the servers. It's a lot of nonsense. TLDR, you aren't seeing as many players as you would normally. So it really feels a lot more empty. And that, in combination with bad storytelling, a lot of the characters from Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, the aforementioned best games of the defining games of this game, were effectively dead or removed between expansions of the Burning Crusade and the Wrath of the Lich King. And you enter Cataclysm without any of these really amazing characters, without this really rich lore. There's no real time to expand on this lore, and now you're running into a problem where you're seeing less players because of this zoning to help optimize the servers, which I get in a way. And the internet is beginning to blossom. The internet is really booming, and you're seeing ways to unfun the game experience. And if you don't know that, if for those of you who are curious what that means, there are things in World of Warcraft or MMORPGs where they're called talents. You put points into talents. The talents basically dictate how your character plays. And a bunch of dorks, and I'm sorry to say this, will say, "Ugh, that's not the proper way to build your character. That's incorrect. That doesn't deal optimal damage." And that is because they are basing this knowledge off of math and tables that they found online. And that, I think, is the biggest issue with modern MMOs in general, is unoptimized fun.
Man, I will talk about optimized and unoptimized fun with you later about other things, but I will very much agree that it's something that it's something that we're going to inevitably romanticize of, the early days of the internet, because you're very right that it was a different landscape entirely of just people being able to go into something, not having full information, having to just sort of figure things out. And that if you were the type of person that liked to do the tables and full optimization, that it was something that usually it would just be you. But then it became, all right, that information naturally circulates a lot more. And that as it spreads, that you have those people who are just naturally like, well, I'm going to want to build optimally. That why wouldn't I want to build optimally? It's a very natural thing that once you have that information in your hands, it's very difficult to not use. And it's the type of thing that when you are trying to be the very best, like no one ever was, whether it's your guild or trying to beat certain raid bosses and be the first ones, especially at the start of new expansions, optimization becomes vital. And that it just becomes part of that competition and part of staying on top of everything. And the unfortunate side effect is that it then comes at the cost of build diversity and that exploration and that choice. Because what MMOs are really about, what RPGs are about, just role-playing games, the whole thing is being able to make choices and do what you want. And once you have, quote-unquote, the answer, it becomes a bit difficult to not do that, at least in something where you have the social pressures of needing to or wanting to perform optimally. That it might not be as vital in a single-player RPG because, all right, you're just playing against a computer, and yeah, if you want to go and find the hyper-optimized build in a guide or something, you can do that. But it is also much easier to enjoy the game
Correct.
in a suboptimal way when there
Correct.
aren't those social pressures.
Well, okay, so like on that note, though, what bothers me, I think that this is, for those of you who are a little confused with the terminology, because we are getting a little bit technical with the way that we're referring to this. A better way to explain this is back in Legion, which was an expansion of World of Warcraft, of which would be one of the better expansions in the past few years. I was playing a combat rogue, which is effectively a pirate, right? And I really aesthetically put my character towards a pirate. Yarr! And they had, at the time, trees, which is their talent trees, your abilities that enhance basically your way you build. One of them was a cannonball barrage. It would shoot down cannons from the sky, like cannonballs, as if firing from an offshore ship and decimate an area. And aesthetically, it was perfect. It felt that in culmination with a thing called the grappling hook, which is a gun that shoots a grappling hook. You felt like a pirate. It felt awesome. Boy, howdy, does it feels good shooting cannonballs from the sky. The issue, these super dorks, and I'm saying this with all love, these super dorks saw how much damage the cannonball barrage didn't do, and they would never take it. And I got yelled at for taking it in a raid because it was suboptimal, as well as the grappling shot. And shortly thereafter, they were Blizzard Entertainment, rather than optimizing and making the aforementioned cannonball barrage better, removed it for a more safe option. And it's just, you removed build diversity and the interest of the class for the sake of these things. And an issue you run into, Jay, I'm so sorry to because you obviously start with MMOs, this is your fault. An issue you run into is eventually every class begins to feel like the other class, but a little different. What you want in your MMORPGs is every class to feel unique. You want every class to feel like they do a different thing. But in the current state of MMORPGs as a whole, a lot of the classes feel like they do the exact same thing as the other class, save the tanks and the healers. I'm saying like DPS, for example, damage per second, characters who specialize in damage every second, they feel like every other class. And it is not a good thing in MMOs for your characters to feel like, well, what's the point of me playing a warrior, for example, when I effectively feel the exact same as if I was playing a Death Knight or a Paladin? That is the problem. That is WoW is currently facing among a list of things that if you want to, Jay, we could absolutely get into.
So I did actually understand everything you just said, and part of it is that despite not actually playing MMOs myself, that I have broader knowledge of game design, game theory, but also there's a lot of overlap with another topic that we're going to be discussing tonight, Magic the Gathering, and I'm not going to get there just yet.
Oh my god, and buckle up everybody, this is going to be a really long night.
like I can, that as we will get to later, and I don't want to completely cut off the MMO discussion because I know we will get brought off, but listen, that there's a lot of...
Don't worry about it. We're going to get everywhere tonight.
That there's overlap in terms of color pie mechanics in Magic, in terms of making things feel different and having things do different things, but also deck optimization that you and I have both said we don't like playing the modern format because you get hyper-optimized decks, and also just the play experience there is not super stellar. But again, I will get to that.
Yes.
Outside of World of Warcraft, you've mentioned that you played a whole bunch of other ones.
God.
Is there one that you feel does diversity extremely well, or perhaps did if it is no longer active?
So I do. And okay, so for those of you curious, I have played effectively every MMORPG that has come out in the past like 20 plus years, right? I'm a huge, what's interesting is I can't really explore this on my stream all that much because a lot of my community don't really care about MMORPGs, and it's kind of lost on them. They don't really care. I love this genre. It's my favorite genre, bar none. And I think the best build diversity on purpose. I did play Final Fantasy 14. I don't even want to hear it, but I did not. I did not get deep into Final Fantasy 14, but that was because I have a strong take about that. I'm gonna go into it. No, screw it. I'm gonna go right into it. Jam.
Have at it.
Listen to me right now. If your justification for a game being good is once you get to level 60, the game gets good, it's not a good game. The game should be good at level 1. The game should feel fun to play the moment you log in for the first time. It should not take hours and hours before it gets good. I do not care. I have no desire to care when I have to spend hours before the game is interesting. And I know I'm rubbing people the wrong way, and you're probably going to get some hate for this, Jay, and I do apologize, but that's the way I feel. This is the case. I think that the game should be fun from the first moment you log in, when you get your first ability. Does not matter what game you're playing, whether it be Halo, whether it be World of Warcraft, whether it be goddamn Guild Wars, I don't care. The moment you log in, it should be fun. And I don't think you should wait to have fun. Look at Elden Ring. Elden Ring was fun from the get-go, from what I've seen. I don't like Elden Ring, but I acknowledge that it's fun. I don't think you should have to wait to have fun. That's silly to me. So that's why I didn't play too much Final Fantasy, because I did not care to wait to have fun. That being said, the best, backtracking to the original conversation, the best class diversity I've ever played, weirdly, was Star Wars Galaxies.
Honestly, as someone who has just sort of generally been aware of MMOs, like I said, never really gotten into any, but sort of watched from afar, that's kind of what I was guessing.
Yeah. Well, Galaxies?
Yes, that my guess is just in the back of my head was like, I would think it'd be Galaxies from what I've seen from afar. So it makes me kind of happy to hear you say that it is. So I want to know, what is it specifically that did that?
I think Galaxies acknowledged. So in Star Wars Galaxies, this game came out years ago. It was ahead of its time. It got ruined by the developers. That happens way more than it should. But what the beauty of Star Wars Galaxies is, every class felt powerful and weak. And that is important. Not every class should feel like this master of everything. You had Jedi, and you felt like a Jedi. You had bounty hunters, and boy, how did you feel like bounty hunters. You had tricks, you were dirty, you were sneaky, you were nasty. Jedi or Sith, whatever your flavor was. You had the Force, you had powers, you had other stuff, tanking, healing. If you were a scout, but here's the beauty, it was not limited to combat classes. There were, and here's the beauty, non-combat classes. You could play as a dancer, someone who buffs people and stays level 1 the entire time, just giving buffs to the cantina. You could play as a pilot and just do space combat non-stop and never even touch the rest of the game. Like, it genuinely felt like you could play a class and it felt like, oh, I'm a Jedi Knight and I feel like a tanky warrior. I am a bounty hunter and I am this. I've got all these tools to my disposal and I'm ready to use them at a moment's notice. I'm a dancer. I may never see combat, but I'll make sure those who do survive. And it's just everything.
It allowed for a lot more of the role-playing and role-playing game.
And here's the thing, and I'll die on this hill. Role players are not an audience you should ever ignore in an MMORPG. Role-playing is as valid as goddamn raining in any part of the world, right? Like, you need rain, you need role players. I'm just saying, because the beauty of role players is they breathe life and they breathe energy into your world. I don't role play, Jay, but I'm on a role-playing server because that's where I've been bullied to go. And seeing people just out and about, just role-playing in the streets, make it feel like a real world.
That it feels like such a benefit for any game, because role players don't get in the way of the folks who are combat oriented. That they just, think about what you do when you walk in Disney, that you have the cast members out and about.
Literally,
and basically
exactly.
it's these fully fleshed out characters that the designers didn't have to design. They literally just assembled, do their own thing, and it's added value for free for the designers. And all they need to do is give the role players just those little bits of tools. And to be fair, role players don't even ask for too many tools, especially not in relativity to combat players.
An unfortunate truth, and this is something that this is pivoting back to World of Warcraft as a game. And this is something that I will give Final Fantasy some credit. World of Warcraft, unfortunately, does not treat its role players well. They do have role-playing servers, which is good. That is great. That helps conglomerate them into one spot. But I genuinely think that the putting all the role players in one spot hurts the other servers and not experiencing that. And maybe that's a server issue. Maybe it's another issue where it comes to like actual semantics, Jay, where it's like, oh, we can't. So many people on this one server will crash server. It's not going to work, right?
I feel like conceptually there's pros and cons. That I think that it's good to have the option of a pure roleplay server for the role players, because then they can go up to other players and not ask, are you a role player, and just go into character stuff. Whereas if you do that on a mixed server, that you can have, awkward hit and miss moments. But I think that there should be. So is there like a clearly delineated, this is a mixed roleplay and non-roleplay server. This is a combat primary server, and this is a roleplay primary server, or is there only roleplay and then
You cut ahead of me because you're way ahead. You are correct. I think while my ideal world would be role players intermingling with like PvPers or PvEers, so player versus player for those who are confused, player versus environment, which is raids and bosses. I think that you run into that issue where, hey, do you RP? Do you roleplay? You run into that awkward situation where suddenly the roleplay feels less natural. Whereas if you're on an RP only server, you could just go up to somebody and statistically speaking, you can roleplay with them. I am not a role player, but I can roleplay my way out of I'm good, right? I'm Gucci. You can you just see that dynamic play out, and it's so beautiful to watch because on the one hand, Jay, I would love the average MMO enthusiast to experience roleplay once. At least look at the world of a roleplay server and acknowledge that, wow, role players make this world feel freaking alive. And then they go back to their PvP server. I also acknowledge that PvP servers or PvE servers exist because there are people who do not want to see that and who just want to see big numbers go high. And I think Final Fantasy does this, but I also think, like, genuinely, I think WoW does it the best, where they have their servers built up in a way that you can acknowledge, like, okay, if I want to see RP, I go to Moonguard, for example. Otherwise, I will go anywhere else. And I think that's not a bad thing, but boy howdy, if I could reach out to anyone who likes MMORPGs, just go to a roleplay server once. Trust me, it really adds an extra oomph to the game. I promise you.
And I feel like the way that you can approach that, if you are not someone who really enjoys roleplay and get that experience that Papa's talking about, is there's people in real life who are not super sociable. And that if somebody's super sociable, approaches someone who's a bit more introverted, that person can very politely say, no, I'm not interested. And that's the type of thing you were talking about, that there are ways to disengage and not have to do full roleplay scenes while still being in character.
Correct.
That it's the subtle difference of saying just in character, sorry, I have things to do. And, if you're a busy bounty hunter that needs to find their quarry or needs to turn in their bounty, yeah, that's how a quote-unquote IRL situation like that would happen versus the just totally out of character thing of no buy.
Just like, and the beauty of this is like, I am not an RPer in any stretch of the imagination. I don't get it twisted. I acknowledge why it is fun. My issue boils down to a time thing. I don't have the time to RP. That is a specific issue to me, but I'm an RPer. I love, however, PvP, player versus player. I love like besting other players. And being able to be in an RP world that I've been bullied into going into, I'm able to both appreciate, wow, the RPers make this world feel fresh and alive, but I don't have to really participate in it. And the beauty of it is, there was one moment in the past month where I was asked, like, oh, can you compliment my friend here? And there was just a person, and they were just standing there, and I'm like, yeah, they're wonderful. And they're like, oh, thanks, that's really nice of you to say. And they gave me 50,000 gold, which is not a small amount. And I'm like, tight. Like, you'd be surprised how much fun you can just have, just, dare I say, playing along with some of the role playing. I think it's genuinely, I think if you're going into the MMORPG genre, I think once you should give it a shot. Even if you don't like it, you've tried it, right? And you can just experience the world that is created and crafted and loved and tailored to you by role players. Because honestly, role players are the ones who are logging in when raids get boring, when the game gets stale, when you're waiting for the next expansion. Role players are logging in to have a role play session, and that is what is very important for the longevity of your game. It keeps
things afloat.
It keeps things interesting. You walk through the town and you see the world alive, and you think to yourself, the game's not dead. As opposed to you're on a PvE server. I've been on all sides of the ocean here. And you're on a PvE server, and everyone's logged out because there's nothing to do anymore. You're waiting for the new expansion, and it feels like a ghost town. It feels dead, and you think to yourself, even subconsciously, this game is dead. There's no point. I'm logging out for the last time. Like, our peers make a game sustainable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Ardent Blazes asks if you ever paid off your debt, and that actually reminds me of something that the first time I saw someone play Star Wars Galaxies was actually a friend of mine. and he had chosen, I think it was a smuggler class. He was a Wookiee, and it was Mos Eisley Cantina. He was experimenting with the different commands of just, he discovered there was a /puke command and that you could have your character just randomly vomit. And then he went up to a stormtrooper and did /punch, and he was able to punch a stormtrooper and was fined 5,000 credits.
Yeah.
And that was more than he had at that point in time. And he was just, oh no, I've just ruined my character. I've just lost everything that I've been working for. Unfortunately, he was still very early in that character, so it wasn't, days and weeks lost. But he'd spent a couple hours working it up, and just, oops, that he did not know that the game, that the world was that fleshed out, that it would actually charge you for assaulting an officer.
What's beautiful about Star Wars Galaxies, and that the world building of Galaxies was phenomenal. Ignoring the fact that you could make entire villages with your friends, ignoring the beautiful communities, ignoring the amount of like role play or adventures or things you could do, the different things, the world bosses, the bosses in general, the adventures you can have in general, ignoring that. The devs spent an enormous amount of time saying, listen, you could kind of do a lot, but they will have repercussions. And here's the truth of the matter. You can join the Empire or the Rebellion fairly quickly to the game, but there are quite a few locations based on how wars have gone in the individual sectors that will lock you out. Like if you went to Tatooine and you joined the Rebellion, and Tatooine's currently owned by mostly Imperial soldiers, you're kind of screwed. And it's that kind of decision making that like really impacts your
It's like
choices.
Alliance going into Horde territory.
But to an ultimate extreme, which I think is valid, because it really, this is the only game that I ever felt like I was making an impact killing an Imperial NPC or a rebel NPC. And that is if you have played a single MMO or RPG in your life, that should hold some weight, because killing a single NPC should not matter. But in this game, a single one, even at level 10, matters. And that was a delightful experience. And I will never have that back, because I believe BioWare? I don't forget who owned it, but they messed it up.
Yeah, if memory serves, that game was shuttered some time ago, and it makes me wonder if we're going to see a new one spun up in the new Disney era. My guess is not, because they're focusing, to be fair, they're still making a lot of Star Wars games, and a lot of good-looking Star Wars games at that, just not MMOs.
Well, they also have Star Wars The Old Republic, which, to his credit, is fine. But it definitely feels like a game. The issue with some MMORPGs is they become dated so fast, because you are playing, let's say we'll use World of Warcraft for an example. You are playing World of Warcraft since 2007. The graphics are going to look dated compared to a game that comes out today. And that's the issue we're into with Old Republic, is the graphics look yeesh. So, like, a beauty of certain MMORPG genres is if you are going to make an MMORPG in the year 2023, make sure you stylize it, because WoW is stylized. There's a specific style to WoW that makes it quote unquote timeless. But if you shoot for this like perfect real 4K aesthetic, it's going to look rough. It's going to look rough in 3 years, guaranteed. And that's the problem that Old Republic is currently facing. It looks rough because they tried to make it look real like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and you saw that a lot just back in the day for very beginning of the console wars, that if you were focused on realism, that by the time the next generation console comes out, there's this huge disparity. But being able to make something look cartoony, make it look stylized, you're right, that ends up making it a bit more timeless. It's a bit safer. That there's just a lot of examples of everything from Mario to other games of just being able to play that off in your favor and use whatever the graphical abilities or limitations, frankly, are at that time, and have it not be such a stark contrast, or at least something that folks can't look at a one-to-one example. Because when you're trying to make something realistic, there's going to be a lot more one-to-one comparisons to actually make.
Like, a good example that, if for those of you, once again, that are maybe confused, is, Jay, are you familiar with the Battlefield series? Battlefield, like...
I'm familiar with the series as a concept. I know the basics of it. I have never played any of the Battlefield games.
How about Call of Duty?
Once again, I've just never really been an FPS player, so I certainly know what Call of Duty is, and I know all the different iterations in the franchise. I couldn't tell you anything about the stories.
So if you were to watch Call of Duty 2, the original Call of Duty, you would feel a little side like jukes, like, okay, Call of Duty 2 compared to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 today, which was the remake of the original, you would notice the difference. However, if you were to play a game like Hades, are you familiar with Hades?
Yes.
Hades, which has a very unique and beautiful art style, if a new Hades came out tomorrow, Hades 2 is on the way at the time of this recording, you would realize, wow, like, this is a timeless game. Like, this game, you can play Hades 1 to its entirety today, because they did not focus on the graphics, they focused on the gameplay. And this is a side note into the side note. You could have the worst looking game, but if the gameplay is good, it's a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do not believe me, this is for those who are like, no, actually, no. If you don't believe me, I have a repertoire of games that are on my list that are just fantastic. But a good example that everyone more or less knows is Risk of Rain 2. Risk of Rain is just a very basic, just full of like polys, very straightforward game. There's not a lot to it. But boy, howdy do people still play that game, because the gameplay is second to none. It does not matter what the graphics look like when the game feels and plays as well as that game does. And that is something that a lot of people forget about when going into the gaming industry. I'm very passionate when it comes to gaming. So when people go into like the gaming industry saying, I want to make the next ultra realistic Last of Us Part 10 beautiful one-for-one like real life game, they have to realize the game has to be good. And if you don't believe that is the case, please look at the game Forspoken. I believe the game just recently came out. It was beautiful, but it was horrendous because the gameplay, the dialogue, the energy was awful.
I can point to basically a massive example of this concept of graphics do not matter, gameplay does, and I can do it in a single word. Yeah. Nintendo.
Look at what was it? The Nintendo. I have not played a single Nintendo game for years. I have not, but I can acknowledge that the Odyssey, I believe it was the most recent one with the hat.
Mario, yeah, Super Mario Odyssey.
I can acknowledge that game looks beautiful, will age indefinitely. People will be speedrunning that game until the dawn of time.
Nintendo has never played the same game as Sony and Microsoft. They've never cared about optimizing their consoles in terms of graphical capability.
Correct.
That it's always been entirely secondary. What they focus on is their style, their gameplay. That it has caused certain problems, certainly, in their development, and that them being able to keep up with certain franchises. But they very much made these choices deliberately of, okay, we're going to focus on the technology and some of the gameplay elements more. That when Nintendo does so well that a lot of folks don't necessarily realize, they don't innovate technology. They repurpose existing technology for gaming purposes. Touchscreens existed for a decade on Palm Pilots before the DS. The type of technology that the Wii remotes use is the same thing that was used back in Duck Hunt and other accelerometers.
It's true.
The Duck Hunt flash gun is the same technology that's used in remote controls, that had been used in remote controls for decades. That they don't actually make new stuff in terms of their tech. That's not what they do. They gamify it.
Exactly. And that is that's something you'll notice. Okay, so a good example I have is the replayability of a game. If, for example, I have played a lot, I would say 85% of the Call of Duty franchise. I am someone who played Call of Duty as a youth, so I keep up with it, mostly for the campaigns, occasionally for the multiplayer. And don't get me wrong, I played the entirety of the campaign of the most recent Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. But if you showed me that compared to Call of Duty, the original Modern Warfare 2 from 2009, I believe, or 2007, I'd be like, all right, neat. And it has almost no replayability. There's no reason to replay the missions. They're so linear. They're so straightforward. They're so, I don't want to say boring, but there's no other better word for it. And that is an issue, I believe, with a lot of AAA, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, a lot of AAA gaming companies are in that issue where they are playing safe than sorry, which is unfortunate for we as the consumer are not having a good time playing the same game for the 45th time.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing because in some ways, it's difficult to begrudge folks for saying, all right, this is something that has done well in the past, so let's do it again. That seems to be what people want. This is what the market data says. But at the same time, going back and very similarly to it's going all the way back to MMO builds, that when you have the data statistical answer of what is correct, what do people like, what is optimal in your combat build, what is the optimal type of game that will appeal to the most players, that it ends up stifling the creativity, it ends up stifling the diversity. And yes, you'll still sell games and they're still going to be good, they're certainly not going to be bad, but if you make yourself beholden to data and not try new things, especially in gameplay or game development, that in MMOs, there is actually going to be inevitably a quote-unquote correct build, correct answer. But there is not something like that in game creation. And while you can take like you said, that safe route and be all right with it, you never know, all right, what's going to be that next big innovation. Look at Wii Sports, look at what the Wii did in terms of just galvanizing the entire gaming industry and just the gaming population as a whole. That there was the whole thing of, grandparents, parents, young children who didn't consider themselves gamers. Same thing, you can say all you want about gacha games and mobile games not being good. Gaming getting onto phones and mobile basically doubled or tripled the number of gamers in the world.
Okay, so I had to play to re-emphasize the fact that I'm not just some like begrudged dork who is very much like, oh, all games are bad in 2023. I acknowledge there are games that fit that genre of which we're all looking for. But the issue is, and I will get into this moment, a good example is Path to Exile. Path to Exile is effectively exactly what you want in an ARPG or an MMORPG. It is a fantastic game that has almost infinite build diversity that anyone could do. You could do it, I could do it. We could make unique characters that could test kind of our abilities of creativity, right? The issue. Compare that to Diablo 4, which is effectively the same thing, an ARPG, right? An action RPG. These top-down, explosive, bombastic things. The difference of the two is Diablo is a lot more linear. There are certain things you can and can't do. Your paths are, while expansive, not too expansive, because, let's be honest, Jay, these games aren't meant for you and I. Diablo 4 is meant for your average consumer who played Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, saw a commercial with a KFC Double Down on YouTube or on the TV, and said out loud, wow, I played Diablo 2, I should play Diablo 4. So those games are designed, and I don't want to say dumbed down, but they are made easier for the folks who are the average consumer, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the issue is so many companies realize that the hardcore or even medium to hardcore community will never be truly tailored to in any game capacity, because once again, I can't necessarily blame the companies for trying to make a bottom dollar, right? Sure, I guess. But those communities will never truly be like capitalized on because they are looking for the average community, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. And I totally see where you're coming from on that. And you're definitely not wrong that at the end of the day, like I said, they're trying to sell games to as many people as possible. And frankly, statistically speaking, the hardcore gamers are not statistically the biggest slice of the market anymore. That it used to be, if you rewind the clocks, about 20 years, but definitely not now. I think that the balancing act and what really shows thought and just real effort in a game's development is when you can have a game that is simple and accessible on the surface, but then has a lot of depth beneath it. And something that if you're just a first-time player, you can pick up, have a really good time, enjoy it for what it is, but then there's a lot of crunchy mechanics beneath it that if you are someone who wants to hyper-optimize or be able to do something that's a bit outside the norm or just more complex, that you have the ability to do that. And I think one of the best examples of it is Pokemon. Pokemon games can be picked up by the layman. The EVs, IVs. Yep. And that if you want to get into the competitive scene, that there is so much depth there. There's so much strategy.
That's good.
The difference between doubles and singles is massive, but that's not what they put in the main game. They put it as singles in the main game. They make it so you don't need to worry about EVs and IVs and natures. That's superfluous, but it's all there if you want it.
I do, on that note, and I do have to say this to all of the game developers who may be listening, this is not. I am not a game developer. I have a excuse me. I have a bachelor's in programming. Yes, I have a bachelor's in computer science. Sure, I have coded games. Yes. That being said, I am not a game developer. That is not the same thing, right? I have not developed a game in a professional capacity, but I sincerely believe that game developers, despite all of that, should listen. This is a little bit of a side tangent, I know, but should listen to their hardcore players. Not because their hardcore players are right. Hear me out. Like, I feel like the warrior class feels really weak. No, but they should listen to the hardcore players for this regard. Oh, after you beat the last raid tier boss, there's nothing to do. I feel bored. Because the hardcore players are going to optimize the hardcore victory, effectively, your end game, as it were, early, about a week, 2 weeks early, than the rest of the community who are just playing casually. And if you want your game to continue, if you have an online service game and you want that game to continue to succeed, you should listen to your hardcore player base, not because there are certain things that are balanced or unbalanced, but because you need to realize when the game might get dull and how to avoid that. Because you're going to realize quickly that if I'm a hardcore dork, for example, I'm a streamer,
They're
right?
giving you the weather forecast before it gets here.
Exactly. And I'm a streamer, right? If I wanted to, God, the dream, right? If I wanted to stream MMORPGs all day, every day for 16 hours straight, you should give what I have to say a little bit of credit, because I am not an exception to the rule. There are many of folks who do that. And you should see, like, oh, what this guy's problem is now is going to be the average consumer base's problem in a month from now. So that is my side.
It's that balance of, you should always listen to every slice of your community, every slice of your player base. You should listen to the hardcore players. You should listen to the casual players. Right. It's not only listening to a single one, that it's not going to do a game well to only listen to their hardcore player base. It's not going to do a game well to only listen to their casual players. It's finding that balance. And to be fair, finding that balance of how to implement the feedback from these very different groups can be tough, but it's not going to do you any good to outright ignore any of them.
Right. So I've never put much stake in people who are like, oh, we only listen to the casual player base, or we only listen to our professional players. No, you need to find a middle ground that works for the best of the community. There are games that do it well. I won't go into mentioning them because I'll get yelled at by your community. But I will say this: League of Legends. Unfortunately, League of Legends does do a pretty good job of listening to both the professional high-end players and the casual audience. But I know League of Legends is a very hated game, so it's like,
I think, let's get into this, because I think that the stigma of League of Legends is not necessarily about the game or the gameplay itself. I think it's a bit of just, it's somewhat of the stereotype of what you get, frankly, in all online games, of just toxicity. And that if you're going to get into a random lobby, it doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty or if it's League of Legends, if you're doing, open chat with randos, there's going to be a lot of toxicity. And League of Legends did indeed become a bit of a poster child because, well, it is the World of Warcraft of MOBAs. It is the big one. It is the brand name. It is what has made it into mainstream consciousness. And with that comes the broader player base. And with that means you're going to have just a lot more people who are going to be likely to not be nice. That's just what happens when you get it to the broader masses. And it's not a problem that it's not that League of Legends is a bad game. Far from it. It's successful for a reason. So, the whole thing of it being bad, I think, if anything, has circled back to being a meme at this point.
Yeah, I do have to say, and sorry, we're tangenting on a tangent as usual. But I do have to say, one of the things about League of Legends as a whole, and this is exclusive to a League of Legends problem, but you'll see it in other games like Overwatch or whatever, but League of Legends specifically, which is a game based around getting kills, securing objectives, getting gold, and moving ahead, the better you do, the better you go. The worse you do, the worse you go, right? And it's one of those games where you are effectively playing against 9 other players. Not actually, you have 4 on your team, but if you mess up, they're gonna start telling you in chat, right? If it becomes a thin problem where, like, if your team messes up, you're like, oh, why is my bot lane, for example, 0-10, which is 0 kills, 10 deaths? You think out loud, wow, these guys suck, and then you type that one day, you guys suck, and it's like, well, now they're demotivated. Now it's you against those 2 players at the bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
So it quickly becomes a game where The League of Legends is unique where it's not like Overwatch per se, because Overwatch, you can always come around. You're never too far behind because there is not necessarily a
There's
income.
not as many snowball mechanics.
Exactly, but in League of Legends, if you are 10-0, 10 kills, 0 deaths, you are ahead. You are going to roll and you are going to win. And it's like, that is the kind of the difference between the two games, and why you might see more toxicity in League of Legends, because people get frustrated. Oh my god, my bot lane, for example, just gave their bot lane 10 kills. That is thousands of gold. No matter how good I perform, we're going to lose because my team is dog doo-doo. And that is how that toxicity evolves. I think that is why it is specifically a toxicity that it revolves around the MOBA genre.
I think a couple other factors that really add to this is one, game length, that a League of Legends game is going to range anywhere from 25 minutes at the short end to 45 minutes, maybe even longer, and that's going to vary from what you'll have in something like Overwatch or Call of Duty, where the games are going to be a bit shorter. So if you lose, if the people that you're paired with are just really bad, whatever, you'll be able to be paired with someone else new. But if you're in League of Legends, you have to just wait it out, because if you quit, then you're going to be penalized for that. So you just need to endure. And if you are with folks who don't know what they're doing, it is a painful, annoying 45 minutes. So I think I think that contributes to it. And definitely in part, like you were saying, that there is so much more interconnectivity and reliance on a full team composition versus games like Overwatch or other ones where a single player can really carry a team and turn things around even in a late game situation.
Right. And I think that's exclusive to League of Legends. Maybe Dota. I haven't played Dota in years, so that may have changed. But MOBAs in general who rely on a goal income will go through these hurdles. But I forget the original conversation what we're having.
I think, well, so we had pivoted over to League of just you enjoying it. There was stuff about build diversity there and
Right.
some of the design. I'm not actually sure where exactly we were as well. So I'll go to another piece of League of Legends that I really like. So
Sure.
League is another one of those games where I have not played myself, but I've had a lot of different interactions with it. And the way I interacted with League for several years was as a viewer, because I think
Okay.
League of Legends is one of the most watchable games ever
Yes.
designed, because you don't need to know the nitty-gritty. I compare it to American football. I don't know the difference between a halfback and a fullback, but I know what a first down is. I know what a field goal is. I know what a touchdown is. I can tell when the team is going up the field. I can tell when a good pass is made. Similarly, in League of Legends, I understand at least the basics of what a jungler is versus a top laner. I know what the turrets are. I know what the Nexus is. I know what the Dragon is. I know what the Baron is. And I can see when a cool team fight plays out. And that's more than enough for me to have a really good time. And when you have a good commentary team who's throwing in some of that nitty-gritty for the people who know, that even if they mention different builds, whatever, that's effectively to me someone talking about the halfback or the fullback or what formation they were in. And I don't understand that, but it's well put together and just watchable enough that you can see what's going on and understand it as a layman and still have a really good time as a viewer. And I think that's part of what led to League of Legends coverage and spot in esports growing so much so fast, because you didn't need that nitty-gritty info.
Well, okay, so as someone who is for those of you who are tuning in, I have played competitive League of Legends at a collegiate level. I have been sent to a national team. We were going to go to nationals as my college was, and then COVID happened, so we couldn't go. We split the reward like 20 ways. But I am a collegiate player. I am very proud of that fact because it's very challenging to do. And as a shoutcaster, I'm an amateur shoutcaster. I shoutcast for my friends whenever they're available, or other people who, I am a part of a few teams who sometimes look for shoutcasters, someone who hypes up the team. It's the speed at which I talk, the cadence, and the knowledge. Those things combined make for an interesting shoutcasting experience, right? So, as someone who has many a year in League of Legends, the beauty of the game is if you watch 3 games, you know what's happening. There are only there's only 3 lanes. There's only 2 jungles. There's dragons and there's Baron. If you can get past those things, if you can clock those things in, every game, no matter how different or how wild or what champions, you will acknowledge there is an objective to be had. And that is something that League has above a lot of other games, is they really emphasize for their shoutcasting teams, the people who hype up the games, this is what we have to do to win, and this is how you win. Go win. And it has worked phenomenally where anyone can watch. It does not matter what champion is played. It does not matter how they're played. They will sprinkle in some things like, oh, there's CS per minute, there are things per minute, whatever, who cares? They will sprinkle those things in. But they do a phenomenal job emphasizing for the average person how to win and where to come back from. And I think genuinely, albeit has its problems, League of Legends is a fantastic game for the esports genre as a whole. But esports is a whole other conversation that can get very dicey very fast.
Yeah, and that I do really point to League, like I was saying, as one of the vanguards of modern day esports. That yes, there's been high level game play for decades prior to League of Legends. League of Legends was the first one to have a stadium. League of Legends was the first one to really have full seasons broadcast on Twitch. That I primarily watched seasons 4, 5, 6, if memory serves. Nice. That one of my all-time favorite matches that I ever watched was the promotion relegation match where Unicorns of Love got into the LCS and got the doubles, the reverse sweep. And at the end of that game, I still point to as probably the single most hype sequence I've ever seen, where they almost got ace. So there was only one player left alive, and that they were able to then get the reverse ace on the other team and go in on the Nexus, just rush the Nexus. And it was literally as the opposing team was starting to respawn that they started picking off the Unicorns, and they got a last hit in. And just as the last one was killed, they had just fired the blast that would destroy the Nexus. It was like something out of Hollywood. It was so good.
Here's what's buck wild. There are people that have been listening who are like, I have no idea what these two dwarves are saying.
We're going real deep into lore and jargon here.
But what's wild is if you were to watch the replay of that exact thing, you would get an idea of how hype it is. And I think a big part of that comes from the shoutcasting and the camera work. I think that if you were to watch Counter-Strike, for example, granted, Counter-Strike is a phenomenal game in terms of like its esports scene. There's a lot of like intricacies of Counter-Strike that might seem odd. A person holding an angle for like 10 minutes, a person doing a specific thing at a specific time. It just seems a little odd, like if you are new to the genre or you're new to the game. Whereas League of Legends, it's like, oh, at the end of the day, we have to destroy this base, destroy towers first. Wham, bam, thank you, man. We know what we're doing. And that is why I think is the defining factor, which is why League of Legends is such a prominent esport, because anyone and their mother can watch it.
Yeah. That it's for all the, to be fair, pretty true things about toxicity at the rando when you're just getting randomly paired matches. Yeah, that's going to happen. But again, that's going to happen in Call of Duty. That's going to happen in every game. It's not unique to League. It just sort of became the brand name in every way, for the good and the bad.
Yes. That is not... Listen, if you are trying to avoid toxicity in 2023...
don't play an online game.
Don't play an online game. Just don't. Just don't play an online game. You're going to waste your time. If you are trying to avoid toxicity, do not play an online game. I promise you are going to experience toxicity, no matter how you bend it. Like, no.
And that's why a lot of people play ARAM. That they find it...
True! That's why I do it.
And I guess that's sort of a pivot point into something that we were dancing around earlier. Might as well make the transition here for Magic the Gathering, because that's a really good analogy for me. So I, as a Magic the Gathering player, am a limited player. I do draft and sealed. That's all I do, because I don't like the hyper-optimized deck building, whether it's standard, modern, legacy, commander. That I can totally understand why people like that being able to combo off makes you feel very powerful. Being able to figure out how to make the best 100-card deck if you're in Commander, 60-card deck if it's other constructed. I can understand why that is compelling to people. But for me, it, one, becomes stale a lot faster of just playing the same deck over and over and over. And two, I cannot stand playing against control, ever. Wow. I once played a standard tournament borrowing a friend's deck and came up against a player who was red-blue control, and I never untapped with a creature on my battlefield. Papa.
That's crazy,
Papa.
bro. Crazy, bro. That also okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Listen, not to say that I play control per se, but I do play control. Yes, I'm a control player. I'm sorry.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
like I said, to each their own. I don't begrudge players who play control. I just don't like playing against control, so
That's valid.
I know how to not have to, and that's do limited, because in draft and sealed, yeah, you might have a counterspell every so often, but if anything, it takes more skill to get even 1 or 2 counterspells off in limited, because that's just how that works, and that each time you play an event, it's going to be different. Each draft is different. Each sealed pool is different. And that I enjoy the puzzle of the deck building process, and
Fair.
then just the different matches that play out, because you're not getting hyper optimized. That it feels very similar to what you have with ARAM in terms of League of Legends, where there is that variance to each one, and just it inherently feels less stressful, less crazy, but at the same time, I love optimization in limited deck building, but there is no perfect answer in that, because there's too many different pieces, and you can learn how to be a really good drafter or sealed deck builder, and you can tell when you go to pre-releases or play online the difference in skill levels, but it's because of heuristics and learnings and habits, not because you know numerically, all right, this is the best one. Even when you have card stats, it still varies. And that's how I choose to play Magic the Gathering. So I've kept up with every set basically since Khans of Tarkir, so 2014, a while now.
Nice.
I'm really hyped for March of the Machine, which actually has its pre-release this Friday, this weekend.
That's right.
And
Shameless
just
plug. We're
Yeah.
sponsored. Hey, we're sponsored. Hello.
hashtag not sponsored. Hashtag yeah, I get sponsored by Wizards. Hey, yeah, reach out to me, Wizards.
We're not sponsored, by the way.
No.
Disclaimer.
But yeah, that's me. So for you, you've said you don't play Modern, but that you do play Control. So that means you play Constructed. What are your formats of choice?
So I haven't played a draft or a sealed in a long, long time. I would love to, but it's been kind of a semantics issue. Money's expensive, Magic's expensive, etc.
That's the other thing I like about Draft and Sealed, because I sell the rares back to the shop to fund my next draft and become self-sustaining. I don't always make all the money back, but it means that I'm usually only paying, $5-7 a draft or something.
That's smart. In my case, I've always, and this is not exclusive to just Magic the Gathering, but Magic the Gathering allows me to do this. I have always been a huge advocate for playing what's goofy. I love jank in all of its forms. I do not believe in metas. I believe that things can be fun but inherently challenging, and I believe that challenging yourself and your abilities to create makes you a better player in what you do. So when I play Magic the Gathering, I play things that are not inherently the best thing, but I put my own spin on them. I do my best. I make them. I might not. Hey, I don't win sometimes, but hey, when I do win, it's all the more satisfying. So currently, I play Magic the Gathering in the Commander format, which is the 100 cards, one Commander. You know how it goes.
Yeah, it is the most popular format in Magic the Gathering.
It is, bar none, which is great. But in the same vein, I acknowledge that there are people who unfortunately, play Commander, which is for fun in a serious capacity. I avoid those players like the plague.
It is known as CEDH, Competitive EDH, which is the original acronym Elder Dragon Highlander, but that's getting into way too much jargon there already.
We're not getting to we ain't diving into the lore, you know what I'm saying? What I will say is I intentionally build bad decks, not just to challenge myself, but because here's the truth, and this is going to be a hard pill to swallow for some. If you win every game you ever play, it's going to be boring. Why do that to yourself? Why not make something bad good and challenge yourself and others? If I play a goofy, like I'm playing currently a 5-color deck in Magic the Gathering, which is by itself not great.
In and of itself, if you're playing a 5-color deck, you are already doing something goofy. It is generally not, cards are not designed to be in 5-color decks.
Right.
You can do that perhaps a bit easier in Commander than in other formats, but even then, just conceptually, for those who might not understand Magic the Gathering, there's 5 different colors, and in order to get to play cards of different colors, you need lands, resources, and that most lands will make 1, maybe 2 different colors. There's a couple that make all 5, but they usually have different drawbacks in that the concept of building your mana base becomes much more complex the more colors you have. And it gets tougher exponentially so that a 2-color deck is usually the go-to, 3 sometimes. when you're getting into 4 and 5 is when you have to really be conscious of, all right, how many sources of each color do I have? Because you're opening yourself up to a lot more variance.
So originally I played, one of my decks that I made for fun was a 3-color Esper deck, a Reanimator. And I built it for fun because it was based off the Dungeons and Dragons dungeon mechanic, which is not good. And it turned out to be amazing. It was super good, super competitive. I did not like playing it because if you win every game, it's not fun. No one's gonna want to play you.
Oops, I accidentally made a competitive deck. Yeah. Better throw it away.
So I threw it away. And I made a 5-color deck. I've always loved 5 colors. And in this case, I made a 5-color deck. It's called my Deck of Many Wins. I won't get to the semantics, but just know that it's a really, really funny deck. It is not designed to win outside of just the fact that it's goofy. It's really, really goofy, really, really funny. Anyone can play against it because you could win with a standard deck that you build. And I think that's important for any game. I just think that sometimes, and we go back to the original conversation, players will optimize the fun out of games. It does not matter if it is in a video game or a trading card game. I think that the people will remove fun if it means they can win. And sometimes that's just not fun. Sometimes you want to have a game where you can lose. If you are capable of losing and then you turn around and win, that's awesome. But if you're about to win and someone pivots and they win, that's awesome. Why would you want to win every game? What's the point?
Yeah, that's just be that Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering, actually said that part of the land system and having there be that variance is a feature, not a bug. That he wanted the inexperienced, unskilled player to always have that 5-10% chance of pulling off a victory against an extremely skilled player. That he felt was very important for the design. That he naturally wanted it to be very, very skill intensive and something that the best players could actually show that they are the best and have the ability to not only be creative but be skilled in the game, but that he wanted to make sure that it could never be 100% optimized, and leaving that variance of lands, of just random draws and needing to have lands as a thing in the deck versus certain other games that will automatically give you resources. Hearthstone, for example, he felt was really, really important.
Well, okay, that is okay. Also valid. But see, okay. So, in my opinion, I think that there is a place for competitive, serious, you play to win gaming. You are here to win, and whatever crazy combination you come up with the legality, awesome. But I also believe there are formats that exist to avoid that competitive mindset. And unfortunately, even those subsects get invaded by competitive players because there are people who just cannot afford to not win, which is frustrating. And a good point I have is I tried to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Lately with a for fun deck, and that was a mistake, Jay. That was a mistake.
I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Very, very casually prior to getting into Magic, and the way I got into Magic was at one point I moved and there was not a casual local Yu-Gi-Oh! Scene, and a friend said, hey, you should maybe try Magic the Gathering. He was like, I don't want to get into a new card game and have to make a new deck and worry about that. And he said, let me tell you about a thing called Draft, and the rest is history.
Right, which is great, and I'm super stoked for you on that point. The inverse of that is I was told, hey, it's time to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a great time. And then I hopped in. I was going to play it on stream one day, and then I hopped into a game a week ahead of time, and I got annihilated on turn 1 before I even could play a single card, 2 games in a row. To which I said, at what point is this fun?
When do I get to play the game?
Right. I want to have fun too. So I dipped. I called it a day. That was the last I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Granted, I'm sure Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not always like that. I'm sure there are fun decks.
It's so tough when you're working with online matchmaking. And fortunately for Commander, that when you have a LGS and for most in-person tournaments, that they will say right up front, this is a CEDH tournament or this is a casual tournament. And especially when it comes to playgroups, some playgroups will even say, there's like a budget limit of the cards in your deck cannot be more than $200 in total, which, that sounds like a lot, but when it's 100 cards, that's not too absurd. and you unfortunately don't have ways to filter that when you're doing online play for any game. And when you're doing that, you're right, you can frequently just walk into a bad time.
It also pivots back to the fact that most Yu-Gi-Oh! Adventures, at least where I'm from, is an online experience. And once again, players will optimize the fun out of games.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going online, you have to win. You have to not waste your time losing. So people like me get pushed away from the hobby because we are effectively bad compared to the people who optimize their decks to the ultimate win con, right? So that's... I don't want to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Per se, but if you've never seen a video on like TikTok or YouTube, for example, that just shows a turn 1 win, you need to watch it to understand the context of, wow, this is just not fun to watch. Imagine playing it.
Yeah, it can be admittedly a little bit egregious. And obviously, this is not begrudging folks who enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! That it is a different game. And it's the type of thing that there are players who love that type of hyper-optimization, being able to do that. And that's fine. I'm glad that game exists for them. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Stylistically has a lot of really cool stuff. The anime and manga was really formative for me when I was young. That Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something that has meant a lot to me. And the fact that I don't really interact with it too much now, that's fine. I'm glad that it has become that other thing and that there are these different card games, because Magic would not be able to satisfy a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players in terms of gameplay. That this is what makes TCGs and gaming as a whole so great, is that if you find a game that's not for you, there's probably one out there for you, and you might just have to search a bit more for it, and that's fine.
You will find a game for you. I promise you. You will find a game for you. There are more games than Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and Magic. I promise.
Oh yeah, so many.
Flesh and Blood is a good example, by the way, if you were curious.
That's one that I've heard a lot about because it's relatively new in the past couple years. Haven't gotten into it. I hear they have Draft and Sealed. Haven't gotten around to learning it because I feel like I don't know if I want to. While I'm able to keep my Magic habits pretty simple and not too expensive, I don't know if I'd want to be into 2 games at the same time, even as a limited player.
That's where I'm at with it. Flesh and Blood is fantastic. I just don't have the time to learn it.
That's really it.
That's what it's down to, honestly.
But seriously, Papa, if you're having trouble getting good Magic gameplay online because in Constructed you aren't able to actually filter and find non-CDH folks, join me in Limited Land. I will teach you how to draft, man.
I've drafted for years. I'm very competent at drafting.
Okay, even better.
The issue is, at a certain point, and you're aware, it does boil down to RNG.
Sometimes when you get into the high tiers, it can. It's certainly less than what you get in Constructed, but I can understand. I think it's a lot worse in Sealed than in Draft.
Don't you lie to me.
Oh, I'm not going to say it's non-zero. You are very right.
It's RNG, you know it.
I'll respectfully disagree at least the highest level. I've seen some crazy stuff that you're not wrong. If you open a bomb rare, that's gonna make a difference.
Yeah.
But at the very least, that like even in a draft event, all right, you ran into the person who opened the mythic, that you can still play another game with another player and have a chance at having a good time, much more so than if you're going through and trying to grind out standard or commander games.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I agree.
It's all good. It's all good, man.
I mean, to each their own, right? If you enjoy draft, I know many folks who do. I mean, I used to play standard dog. Like, that's the real dog doo-doo area. Like, standard is the worst because that is the definition of, oh, I looked online for the best deck. I found it. It's this one. It's like, okay, great, cool. That's fun. That's fun. Everyone playing the same deck, awesome. Very fun. Very fun. I love standard. That's my issue with standard.
For folks who aren't familiar, standard is the format that only uses the last couple of sets released, so it has the least inherent card diversity, and therefore is most likely to end up being quote-unquote solved.
Yeah, everyone can figure out what the best deck is in, like, what, 12
week.
sets or like that. It's like, oh, fun. That's fun. So I've stopped playing that game for a reason. But that's Magic the Gathering. Welcome to our Magic the Gathering podcast.
Ta-da!
Hey! That's my takes on Magic the Gathering, though.
You never actually mentioned, though, who's the commander of that 5-color deck?
So right now, it is the... Okay, so Asterix. It is, oh my god, oh, her name. It's the mono white for 3 that tap 5. She's the Weatherlight commander. You look for a legendary that costs equal to the amount of colors you have. I can't remember.
Nope, I'm blanking too.
Right, but she's the so I've deleted my Esper deck because it was too strong. And when the next, it's not the next set, but when the Lord of the Rings sets drops, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have 2 5-color decks. One is gonna be my standard deck of mini wins, right, with her, the Weatherlight captain. The other
Sisay.
is thank you. This is a yes. The other is gonna be Tom Bombadil, Saga Tron. That is my plan for the other deck. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I have every sword of blank and just sagas up the wazoo. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I haven't actually seen the spoiler for that one. So what is the effect on that?
So Tom isn't amazing. He's one every color, right? I think it's like 4/4. If you have, he's based on sagas. If you have 4 more saga, this is memory, saga counters on the field, he has hexproof and indestructible. Okay, so he's saga based. Whenever a saga exits the battlefield from the field, you may reveal cards at the top of your library until you reveal a saga and put that in the battlefield. So he's a saga based commander, which sounds good until you realize every saga is awful, with the exception of like 3. And it's like, I'm gonna play Sagatron, which is Tom, who has built-in indestructible and hexproof. And then you just give him a bunch of swords of blank, which is really funny. That's the plan for the future.
Yep, I just found it. Tom Bombadil, 1 of every color, as long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control. So that's interesting because it doesn't require 4 sagas. It's just lore counters. So that could be as few as 2 sagas with 2 each.
Yeah, you're right.
Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Only triggers once per turn. So basically, I can appreciate the flavor here because he just keeps telling stories, and one story ends, another story begins.
Exactly. But here's the issue. As someone who preemptively ordered every single saga ever made in Magic the Gathering, it cost me $10. If you're confused what that means here listening, that is not a good sign. Typically, cards are associated with value, and if 82 cards equal $10, that is not a good sign for the title.
No, because I know there's at least like 1 or 2 that has to be more than 10.
So there's sort of is. I got them on like a bit of a sale, but the Warhammer 40k ones are okay. But outside of those, they're kind of garbage. They're kind of crap. So unless there's new sagas coming out, they're kind of doo-doo. I'll be honest. I mean, if you ignore like the big power staples, there's like 2 that are good. There's a mono green one that's pretty good, and there's Urza's Saga, but I don't count Urza's Saga.
I was gonna say I think Urza's Saga is somewhere around $10 on its own. So
it's like $20, but like.
Okay, yeah, but you're not wrong that everything except for 1 or 2,
yeah,
I can absolutely see just about everything equaling $10 because a lot of them are uncommons. That
there's like 20 rares that are just like, oh, we're bad, and like 10 mythics that are like, oh, we're also bad. It's like what's the saga? Sorry, for those who are listening, sagas are inherently just terrible. They're not good cards. I'm not gonna go into the reason why, but they're not great. They're not great.
Yeah, a lot of the issues with them stems from the fact that they are inherently slow, that they are turn-based, at least normally, that when you play them, you get an effect, and then the turn after that, they get a new effect, and the turn after that, they get a new effect. And when you're doing hyper-optimal stuff where, it's not as bad as Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can have turn 1 wins, but you can have turn 3, 4 wins.
2. Yeah, exactly.
So and you're not going to necessarily have time unless you're doing something screwy with the sagas and getting them to trigger early.
Typically, if we're you don't want to wait 3 turns for something to be good. So it's like, that's the issue with sagas. They take time to do stuff. That is why they are cheap.
Yeah, Griff has the right idea. Proliferate. That's what you're going to want in that deck.
Can you ban Griff? Can you ban Griff? Get him out of here! Get him out of here! kidding. Griff is really sweet. I'm kidding.
Can
Don't
I
ban Griff.
do like timeout 5 seconds? Will that work?
Yeah, timeout's fine. Timeout's
There we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we can talk about Magic all night, I feel like. Because Magic the Gathering is... The issue with Magic the Gathering is it's such a... not everyone plays it, which you think they would at least heard of it, but, like, no. Despite the South Park episodes, not a lot of folks play this game, which is unfortunate, because I do like it a lot.
Yeah. Do you follow the lore at all, or is that just not really where you are as a player?
I love the lore. Jay, I love the lore. Issue. I have not kept with the lore in like an entire 2 sets because it's gotten pretty stupid. So
okay, because like I was super into the lore up until War of the Spark, then fell off because they kind of put their foot in their mouth and destroyed a lot of things, and then got back into it in the past 2-3 sets because it's been big climactic storytelling, sort of end of arc stuff. So I am now at least essentially caught up on all this stuff. And you're right, it's big, crazy, stupid stuff for the most part. They've done some interesting things, some good things. It wasn't as bad as War of the Spark, I'll tell you that much.
I didn't... well, War of the Spark kind of sucked, but like, I don't know. I feel like the issue you're going to run into is... much like how World of Warcraft is doing, Magic the Gathering is currently taking their biggest villains, their rogues gallery, and kind of blowing through them pretty quickly. Once the Phyrexians are quote-unquote dead, which, let's be honest, the good guys always win, Phyrexians will lose,
oh, yeah,
whatever. Of course.
So they've already released all the lore for March of the Machines. Do you want to know what happens?
I'm going to watch a recap video on my own time, honestly. I will get into that, but I suspect that the Phyrexians lose because they're the bad guys. And it's like, sure, I guess, right? Whatever.
Well, yeah, of course. Like, you can't have the multiverse end and become all Phyrexian. It doesn't work for the game.
I get that.
I will say, and this is all I'm going to say, I think this is a simple enough spoiler since you already know that, yes, the Phyrexians do not, in fact, take over the multiverse.
Of course not. Yeah.
They have left the door open to a Phyrexian return in the future. They have put them in their back pocket very neatly, and that the good folks at Magic the Gathering have not written off the Phyrexians forever. That they would be foolish to take, like you're saying, one of their biggest, baddest villains in their 30-year history and just put a end to them, close the book on them. They have very deliberately left the back door open so that 5, 10, whatever years from now that they can come back to them. Do not worry about that.
It's the Eldrazi effect. Emrakul is on the moon.
Yep.
Until further notice, and it's whenever Wizards needs a big bad that's just very, very scary, they'll pull out the Eldrazi effect. We're gonna go to this Cthulhu level corruption and rinse and repeat.
I will also say, and I don't consider this a spoiler, they sadly did not do what I wanted, which was having Emrakul come out of the moon specifically to fight the Phyrexians. No, I wish that they had.
I'm a huge fan of the Phyrexians and Emrakul and the Eldrazi, and I know that we're going to do that because the Eldrazi aren't going to come out until like Wizards needs another big bad for the week. Like in the same way that Nicobolas has been trapped inside of the Hellvault? No.
No, the meditation realm.
Yes. Nicobolas will come back. Spoiler.
I'm sure he'll find a way to obtain a new spark.
Right. And in which case, like, sure. The issue I have with Wizards is they're not ready to abandon their big bads. If you don't believe me, just look at the history of Tezzeret. Tezzeret's been in the game forever. That dude will not die. He will just continue to become more machine than man. The end. Sorry, we're getting into the semantics, but the Magic the Gathering lore.
No, please.
That's the case. That's the case.
I don't get to talk Magic the Gathering lore with most of my guests. By all means, go down this rabbit hole.
It's frustrating because you would love to see more, like, intricate villains. I would love to see, I don't know, Ob Nicholas become the next big bad, right? But that's just not going to happen. I feel like Wizards is going to run this Phyrexian, Nicobolas, Eldrazi thing to the ground. And maybe they'll come back to slivers until occasion.
That's going to be the interesting question, that now that they are reaching the end of this big Phyrexian arc and that they have done, like you said, they've gone through the big three, as it were, of Eldrazi, Nicobolas, Phyrexians, and now they are starting what will inevitably be a new arc. And it's going to be that question of, do we have a new big bad, or are we going to filter back to something old like the Slivers? That I think that of the remaining big bads, that feels like one of the places to go. But at the same time, I don't feel like the Slivers, well, one, Slivers have never been printed in standard since
No.
I played the game.
Absolutely not, and thank God.
And I don't think that they are of the same scale as those other three in terms of big bad villains. They could occupy a set, but in terms of theme and lore, they are not very compelling. They're
Oh, you forget, my sweet, sweet friend. There is a specific big bad that is now a planet. That it simply exists to be an ever-looming big bad, if memory serves. Or I believe his name is Urbo?
oh, Urborg.
Yeah.
Mm,
He'll come back, I'm sure.
mm.
I'm sure we'll have, I don't know, some third-rate planeswalker become a big bad for all of a season. Tezzeret, for example. He'll be a big
At this
bad
point, I
for
kind
all
of want that for him because he's
Yeah!
been just second
been doing
fiddle to
stuff-
everybody. The whole
Exactly!
gag about Tezzeret is he's always the henchman who gets hoodwinked and thinks that
Yep.
he's going to be able to, even if not be the number one, that he's actually going to be a big number two, and he just gets used and discarded by everybody.
The lore is very unfortunate too, my boy. Which is unfortunate because I like Tezzeret a lot. I think it's really cool. But no, you're gonna get something lame like, I don't know, Soren's gonna be bad, or I don't know, Shanra's gonna twist. And I feel like Wizards is suffering the same problem that Blizzard is, which is like, we don't know what to do with our characters. Oops. Oops. Oops.
Oh, I have one other guess now of what their next big bad could be, and I can't say it because it's too related to things in March of the Machine. So, like, DM me after you get caught up on the lore, and I'll tell you what my guess is, because you might actually have the same guess as me after you know everything.
Okay, well, I mean, that's something shocking to me. Like, it's probably going to be some nonsense. Like, I mean, the here was technically bad for a bit. Like, you have, I don't know, who knows? Who cares at this point? Like, god dang. I just want, hire other storytellers. Listen, Wizards, please. I can't keep doing this.
The best
Wizards,
storytelling
please.
in Magic the Gathering is the non-central storytelling, that it's all the
Yes.
side stories. Whenever you're
Yes.
getting stuff about just the citizens of a given plane that is sort of going on in the periphery,
Yes.
that's when you always get the best storytelling. I think my favorite Magic the Gathering, just fiction as a whole, there is a book it was done by pretty acclaimed author Brandon Sanderson, I think it's The Forgotten Children or something, that it is a story about a minor planeswalker on Innistrad.
Okay. Good
And
plane.
why am I forgetting his name? But this guy's whole thing is he just wants to live alone in peace, and that he writes contracts and creates contracts with demons, and that he writes them in such a way that he's always actually able to get the upper hand on them. And
Good.
so he has promised his soul to all these different demons, and they're all just sort of watching him, waiting for him to slip up. But he's kept things in such a way that they actually start to just like him and become friendly with him. So they aren't super compelled to actually cash in on this contract. It's a really wild book, and it's very creepy and fits the world of Innistrad while having absolutely nothing to do with the broader storylines.
I have a question for you. The interviewer becomes the interviewee. What's your favorite plane of all of Magic the Gathering? You gotta pick one. You gotta pick one plane of all of Magic the Gathering history. What do you choose?
It depends on what you're asking for. Are you asking me like where my favorite
Lore.
set is, what my favorite flavor lore?
Flavor, lore, set, all in one. You have to pick one set that just rules. You sing its praises. What is it?
Bablovia.
Wait, what?
The plane of Bablovia. The setting of Unstable.
Are you for real?
Yes. Because it has been the intricacy that it has been written with, the irreverence it's been written with. And I think part of the reason I like it is because it is free from the shackles of a lot of the things in normal Magic, that it's able to do some things with its lore and the storytelling that it's gotten that lets it be literally and figuratively free in a way that none of the other planes are, that rather all of the other planes are beholden to.
Yeah, for Jay, you ready for right now?
Yeah, sure. Yep. That I actually really enjoyed Unstable. So keep in mind, this is not the recent one. It's not Unfinity. Do you know about Babylovia and about Unstable, though?
I know Unstable. I just didn't think that was the answer you choose, dog. What? I was ready for you to say Lorwyn, Evermore, Shadowmoor, God dang Alaria. What are you talking about?
Well, keep in mind, Shadowmoor and Alara have not been printed since I started playing in 2014.
Okay, great. I don't. Okay.
And and like, yeah, Ravnica's nice. Innistrad's certainly really good. That if I can't choose Babylovia, if I can't have Unstable, I probably choose Innistrad, and it's again not because of the mainline stuff that happens there, but I think that it has some of the best side stories, like Gisa and Geralf, their exchange of letters, their constant antagonizing of each other. There's a super creepy story about the Gitrog frog and this cult surrounding it that is super unsettling. And but now I'll reverse it. What about you? That you do not seem to enjoy my answers.
Lorwyn, Time Shadowmoor, and that entire block. But
yeah, that predates 2014, so I can't comment on that one. So you may be right, though.
I'm so old, I'm melting.
Sorry. And there he goes. It's been a good show, everyone. Good night.
Hey! No, I just love that block quite a bit because it was fantastic. Not from a lore perspective. The lore was fine. It's whatever. That was the first expansion. Fun facts for you nerds in the chat. That was the first expansion that featured Planeswalkers. Was Lorwyn.
Yep, Lorwyn 5.
Yep. I was there for that. I sold a Gideon for 3 packs. No, not a Gideon. Sorry, no, a Garruk for 3 packs. A Magic the Gathering. I traded him, but I digress. Fantastic set, mechanically fantastic, so much fun. I was not ready for any human being to say unstable, so just that.
Ta-da! By the way, the names that I couldn't remember. The title of the book by Brandon Sanderson is Children of the Nameless, and the Planeswalker is Davriel.
Davriel? What's that familiar?
So Davriel Kane only appeared on a card for the first time in War of the Spark, and the book about him on Innistrad was printed some 6 months afterwards. He has not had any prominent role in central Magic the Gathering lore.
Oh, he's the Rogue Shadow Mage. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, I'm familiar with the 3-drop because he's actually a really good card. But is there a 4-drop? Wait, is that a real card?
I forget if he was reprinted in some other set.
It would appear that he would be in multiple sets according to Google, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to get into this right now. Listen, I'll be here all day if I get into the deep intricacies of where Davriel's been reprinted or not. So there's that. Which I won't get into.
He was in, because it wasn't a standard set. It was Jumpstart Historic Horizons, apparently.
I'm Googling right now. Sorry for those of you at home who are like, oh, is he a real card? Apparently he is. Davriel Soulbreaker. Sorry, I lied.
Yeah, because remember I talked that what he does is he writes these contracts with demons and is able to get the upper hand on them.
So handsome.
Oh yeah, he is a devilishly good-looking lad. That think Raul Julia's Adams. Why am I blanking on his first name? Poof.
Yeah.
This is gonna bother me. Gomez Adams. Good lord, why couldn't I remember his name?
I was gonna say, like, go human, the Adams family, the Adams family.
Yeah, Davriel looks a bit like Gomez Adams, doesn't he?
A little bit, yeah. I would say so much. Yeah, black hair, black mustache. That's all it really takes.
That very suave, the tall, dark, and handsome.
Suave, exactly. A handsome lad, as it were. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so that is my actual favorite in terms of written Magic the Gathering lore. That it's a short story. Well, rather, it's a short novel. And there was actually a free audiobook that was done that was really, really good.
Okay, I can't read, so I'm a VTuber dog. Like I can't
Yep.
read. Like I have no idea what you're talking about right now. Words, reading? No, that's not me. That's not me at all. Like no. Try again. Try again. Come on.
So your favorite though is Alara. So
I like
what was the story of Alara? Since I missed it, I don't care about spoilers. What did I miss?
Lorwyn block is basically elves, Kithkin, elementals. Oh my, that's the whole block. There's nothing really special about it, except for planeswalkers, but it was very, very fun to play. It was just fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little biased. It was one of my favorite sets of all time because it was very like, I played mini set before, and this is the first one I was like, oh, here's like, you know, specific tribal aesthetic, which all Kithkin, all elemental, whatever. It was fun. The introduction of Reaper King, which is one of my favorite cards of all time. But yes, that was the energy of the evening. Yes, that was there's other the lore, but hey, the aesthetic, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, baby.
Yeah, and for Unstable, legitimately, that it is very fun. There's 5 different factions. There's the Steam Floggers, which is just a bunch of goblins who want to make things explode. There is the secret agency Sneak, which is this very unsubtle secret agency, which is far too open about their things. Think if the Dimir were just super upfront and sort of broadcast everything they did.
Love that.
There was the Riveteers, which is folks who cybernetics, like inventions, lots of gears. That it is steampunk in its purest sense.
Okay.
I forget the name of the faction, but they're the ones that like combine. So it's similar to Blue Green on Ravnica.
Simic?
Simic, yeah. They're similar to Simic, but in a much more cartoonish sense of that they will splice like the upper half of one animal to the lower half of another and do crazy experiments. And there's one more. The red-black one is imagine sort of it's gosh, I don't know. Are they as crazy as the Rakdos or not? But that it's these 5 different secret organizations, and then in the lore there is the theory that only a few people have, that the true rulers of Babylovia, the ones behind the scenes that are actually funding and powering all the machinations between these 5 factions, are the squirrels.
I do like that as someone who's played. I've played so very little of Unstable or Unhinged, or whatever, because you need friends for that, and you know how it goes. But like, I can see that. I can see that 100%. 100%. Yeah. Squirrel Girl from Marvel situation right now.
And just the cards, the gameplay, the set was really, really good. I have played more of that set than I would care to admit. And it is not perfectly balanced. That
no, it's not supposed to be, right? It's not supposed to be.
No, but it's so damn fun.
It's for funsies. Yeah, exactly. It's for funsies. So I thought. I mean, I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, it's very, very fun.
Yeah. Okay, and I got the name. So it was the Order of the Widget, Agents of Sneak, the League of Dastardly Doom, the Goblin Explosioneers, and Crossbreed Labs.
It's very good. Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I know that folks have invited me to play. I just like I just don't have time. I would love to play this game. That sounds like so much fun. Truth be told, that sounds like so much fun. Oh, I'd love to know that set. Oh, always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Well, you mentioned Lord of the Rings and also the D&D set. I do know that in terms of the many other games you play, that you do enjoy D&D.
I do enjoy D&D. I'm a big D&D fanatic. I have played D&D many a year to the point where my upcoming tattoo is going to be Dungeons and Dragons inspired. Yes.
Ooh. Are you comfortable sharing the concept, or is the concept still in the works?
Sure. No, it's once I find the correct artist, that will work. It is going to be a D20 in front of a D20. The first one is going to be a natural 20. The back one will be a natural 1. And in banners above and below, the above banner will say win some, and the bottom banner will say lose some.
Love it.
Very, very on brand for just kind of the D&D aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
That is, D&D has helped me many a year in my life, and that is why I am a big D&D aficionado. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I love the opportunity to play Dungeons and Dragons, and between us, hey, lean in. Between us, hey, I am trying my damnedest. Listen, when Vex beats this Vexori the Senator, and then a VTuber in front of the show, both here and myself, beats this goddamn cancer, I'm gonna try to bully Vex and Zola into a goddamn D&D game. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, good man, good man.
Because they are both avid RPers, and it would be fantastic. Plus, they're very, very good people, so it'd be very, very fun to watch. I am a huge D&D aficionado, and I have not played in a long time.
Do you remember what the first character you ever made in D&D was?
God, no. Oh my God.
You remember the most recent then?
The most recent, yes.
Your favorite?
Okay, so the only thing I can remember from my youth, Jay, is a sorcerer who casts fireball at a tower. I know not how old I was. I have to assume about 8 years old. But the most recent one, his name is Scraps. I am playing currently in a game with Radical Mari. She has created a game. Scraps is a barbarian goblin who comes from a village of shaman. He was exiled for not knowing any magic. Until he learns magic, he cannot come back. He is a barbarian. Whenever he gets frustrated, especially from learning magic, he enters a berserker rage. So he is a absolute wild card, more or less a feral animal with a giant broken broadsword. And he is my sweet boy. I love him. I love Scraps. He's a wild card. Like he's fantastic.
Does Scraps have access to wild magic?
No, Scraps is very much like a when in doubt, swing out. And he's weirdly sneaky. That is his shtick. He's sneaky in the most obvious of ways, like, hide and bush sneaky. Like, he is just the best boy. I very much enjoyed him. He's the most recent character. I used to be like, I'm a forever DM, Jay. I'm a forever DM. Yeah, I am burdened with the task of being the forever dungeon master. I will never be allowed to play the game.
Leading others to a prize that I myself cannot have.
Correct, the Red Skull Initiative. So, that being said, when I'm able to play, I don't actually play overpowered characters. It's not fun. I play characters that have inherent flaws that make the game interesting to play. Hence Scraps, who's just stupid as sin, but boy howdy is he a goofball. And that is the kind of heat that I bring with my custom games. Because, like, I don't know.
Goes back to the conversations that we've been having about hyper-optimization.
Correct. And Scraps being a absolute goofball is just... The issue is, like, when you're able to articulate your words well and you're able to storytell well, you are damned as a DM forever. That is the case. I'm sorry. If you're a DM out there and you have good articulation and you're able to tell a good story, sorry, not sorry, you're a DM forever. I'm sorry you want to play the game. That's really cool. And I'm glad you can invite your friends. Like, oh, you'll DM for me for a sec. No, you're the DM. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is something that you become doomed to, and I have very deliberately avoided DMing because of that exact reason.
Smart.
Because I hope this doesn't sound, egotistical to me. I feel like I could probably be an all right DM, and I just don't want to.
Right. Well, like, and the thing is, like, that's a preference thing, right? I DM because I can tell a story that is intricate and fun and elaborate. I very much allow the players to play as the characters they want to play. I think that the most fun comes with imagination. What the game is originally, Gygax originally portrayed this game as being a fun game, right? So when I DM a game, I really emphasize the fun aspect. Rule of cool takes priority.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it makes for very, very fun and intricate campaigns, and then that makes for me being a forever DM. That is the damnation that I have agreed to, that I will probably be one that when I do eventually bully Vexoria and Zolon and other company to play Dungeons & Dragons, I will probably also be the DM, because that is my damnation. That is...
Are you the type of DM that will run multiple campaigns in the same world and have a shared continuity, or do you just do new iterations every time?
New iterations. I will spend hours upon hours of refining a very intricate and fun world for the players to explore or not explore. And that is just kind of heat I bring, because honestly, I have an infinite repertoire of ideas and my ability to improvise when needed is indicative of my ability to VTube. So yeah, I'm not really worried about that. The issue just boils down to do I DM or do I let someone else DM who is not new, who's very new to DMing, who just doesn't know what they're doing, right? Like that's the issue.
Yeah, that's another thing of that just becomes difficult because good DMs can be difficult to find,
Right.
and that DMing is something that requires a lot of practice. So it's kind of natural that playgroups are like, "Oh, you have a lot of experience with this." It's obviously something that
Correct.
you, at the very least, don't dislike.
No,
So
I love it. It's just sometimes you want to play the
yeah, you have
characters.
your
And yeah, exactly. I love DMing, but sometimes you're just damned into a position where you're like, do I forsake the overall experience for my selfish need to play as a barbarian who wants to kiss everybody, right? Like it's like,
Do you have any worlds or bits of world building that you're particularly proud of?
I think the best campaign I ever had. I can't really go into details specifically about like, because there's just so much that you would need context for.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have many a campaign that took 2 to 3 years to come to fruition, and what's wild is like, here, okay, for all who are listening to Vtuber Talks at twitch.tv/Vtuber Talks, listen to this VOD. I will say this much: if you are a up and coming DM and you are looking to get into the Dungeons and Dragons role in the DM, you don't necessarily have to be original in everything you do. Every single thing that has ever existed has been done before. I'm sorry, we live in the year 2023.
Simpsons did it.
Yep, exactly. So do not feel bad. Put a little bit of a twist on insert thing here and have fun. Dungeons and Dragons, to its core, is supposed to be for fun with friends or peers at a united table of joy, and that is something that brings me the most joy, is knowing that every Dungeons and Dragons table will appreciate good roleplay, good combat, and good laughs. If they don't, leave the table.
Yeah, if and that's the other thing, that finding the right group to play with is huge, and that sometimes you can just end up clicking with strangers. That there's a lot of local game stores that do what's called Adventurers League, and it is something that's really good for new players. It's a bit unreliable because, similar to online matchmaking, you're being placed with randos,
but when it works,
it can be really good. That my current playgroup that has been going now for, we're probably past the 5-year mark now that we started. It was one person that I had met at a game store one time, and he started doing Adventure League at an LGS and said, "Hey, stop by sometime." And we clicked with the core group of folks at that table, and there was 1 or 2 seats at the table that would always sort of be rotating. That the place we went usually sat like 6 players to 1 DM. That they had a lot of folks at this place. It was a pretty big game store, and we had just one too many instances of the player of the week, or sometimes they'd stay around for a month or 2, just not clicking with the rest of the table. One time we had this like 9 and 11-year-old brothers who, we walk into a town and we're doing just a reconnaissance mission, and one of them says, "I fire an arrow at the government."
Fireball at the tower.
And the DM sort of looks at them and says, "Do you mean that?" And they say yes. And it just derailed the entire campaign. Then other weeks we would just have folks who were a bit too new and not, problematic, but it really dragged the flow down. And at one point we just sort of realized, wait a minute, we have this core group of DM and 4 good players. Let's just go to someone's house. So we just uprooted ourselves from the Adventurers League LGS, went to someone's house, and we've done that for about 4 years now. And that when 2020 rolled around, we started playing on Roll20, but we kept the game going, and we play once a week like clockwork with relatively few exceptions.
I love that. Listen, if you find a group that clicks, if you find a group that you mesh with and they mesh with you, go on. There's no reason for you to find a 5th or 6th or 7th. Sometimes D&D can be the DM, 3 players, 4 players.
Yeah,
You don't have
I
to have
feel
a
like
group of
4
10.
is the ideal number for
Yes,
a
it
party,
is.
honestly. That
It is.
you can, I think 3 is minimum. 5 is workable. I think 6
Anything
is
past
too
that gets
much,
silly.
and
Yes.
2 is too little.
So I think 3 to 6 is
Yeah.
my range. But when you get into 6 range, I'm looking at you DMs. Make sure to prep some stuff that when the group gets split up, you plan for that. Because if you're dealing with 6 players, splitting the group is not a bad idea. So you can mitigate like your encounters and make them really more meaningful when you're forcing the healer, and the tank in one group and 3 DPS in the other group. So, little side note for y'all, little side tangent. I can go into D&D recommendations all day, but I've been doing this for a goddamn 20 years. I've been DMing for a minute. You name it, I got you, chat. Don't even worry about it.
Do you keep up with Critical Role, Vox Machina, anything like that, or just?
I don't, based on time thing. I acknowledge why they're amazing. I also acknowledge that, please, and my heart extends to those listening, please don't base your expectations on Matt Mercer's DMing or the RP experience of Critical Role. And I know that's common knowledge, but some folks I have experienced at my time really
Matt Mercer is a lifelong DM who is also a trained actor working with other trained actors.
Correct. Cannot stress enough. His job, as of now, when he's not voice acting, keywords, is to do D&D. Please keep that in mind. I have come into situations. Yeah. Sorry, I have a bit of a stutter. I don't know if you can tell. I've come into situations where people have come into my group saying like, oh, this, and this. Oh, Matt Mercer will allow this. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. I'm stoked for you, but that's not what we're doing here. And Matt Mercer himself has come out, I believe, in a statement saying like, my biggest regret is not saying like, this is not the average D&D experience. We are professionals kind of energy.
Yeah. And I'm very much in the same way that I have some friends who keep up with every episode of Critical Role, and I'm like, I don't have time for that.
No, I have no time
I'm too busy watching VTubers and anime and shit. But
you're preaching to the choir, yeah, 100%.
So a couple of my friends have actually gotten me into the animated series Legend of Vox Machina, and that's been plenty fine. That it's 2 seasons of 12 episodes, and you don't need any of the information going in, and that's actually very fun. The only thing that is more recently become a bit difficult, there is a character in Legend of Vox Machina, and as it so happens, Critical Role, named Vexalia.
Okay.
And that becomes really annoying when you are thinking about Vexalia and Vexoria.
Hot takes only. The only time I hear Vex, there's only one Vex I think about, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We got that goddamn Snake Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another friend who was talking about a Vex, and I had to do a double take. I was like, you don't watch... Oh, you mean that Vex. Oh.
I'm goddamn bald right now because of certain Vex. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you shaved your head and actually posted it on Twitter just today.
Did you see that?
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that your head is apparently cold, and I have never shaved my head, but I can believe that when you're used to having sort of a buffer there and not feeling air on your skin in that sense, that are you wearing a hat or anything, or are you just...
No, I'm not. So side tangent. I was in the Navy for about 5 years, 6 years, right? And if you're familiar with the Navy, if you would join in the last 15 to 20 years, there was a woman at boot camp called the Dragon Lady. She wore her hair much like a dragon who assumed human form would wear, which is awesome. But she shaved everyone's head at boot camp, and she's the one that shaved my head. And I have not worn this bald head in years. It's not a bad thing. I know, like, I'm sure Vexor is like, oh my God, Papa shave for... No, shut up, Vex. Vex, if you're listening, shut up. I'm saying like, it's just a different feeling to feel when you once had a lock of hair and to not have any hair. It's a very different feeling. So I'm a little bit cold. I'm a little chilly right now. But I think it's worth it because, dare I say, as they say, fuck breast cancer. You know what I'm saying?
Fuck breast cancer, indeed. Yes,
That's right.
and that is a very kind show of solidarity on your part. And
Hell yeah.
after a week or so, I'm sure that you'll get used to it. Like you're saying, it's
Yeah.
just something of acclimation, and that
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're used to one sensation for a while, I have some friends who have shaved their heads. That they still grow hair, but they will keep their head shaved, and they've done that for years and years and years. And they're like, I
Okay.
don't like it when I
Valid.
start to grow hair. It feels weird. I'm no
valid.
longer used to it. So just getting over that initial hurdle of oh, it's very smooth up there.
Dog, like I'm the opposite, where like if it gets too long, I get kind of freaked out. Like I've grown the length that could equate to a ponytail. I'm like,
Oh yeah, I've never been able to get my hair that long, and just even during the like early days of 2020, where I did not want to go to a barbershop, that I cut my own hair with just craft scissors, and I know I didn't do a good job, but I allowed my hair to be a little bit longer than normal, and just sort of eyeballed in the mirror. And the goal was, all right, make sure that if I need to be on a video call for work, that it looks passable. It doesn't need to be good, as long as it looks moderately clean. That's fine.
That's how the name, baby. That's how the name, baby.
Yeah, that's all it really took. And that I knew I didn't want to, grow it out and have a ponytail, because I felt it starting to get long, and like brush up against I was like, no, I can't do it. I just can't. So it was just, eyeball and all right, snip, and that it worked. I made it work. And, well, I go to a normal barber again, but for that point in time, I have no regrets in the very shoddy job I did. And I'm glad that the webcam on my computer is just not super high quality.
I respect that. Like, dog, I did my hair today. I shaved this bad boy all off. I cut down inches of hair, which is quite a bit. And like, I have torn my head asunder and not enough. So I had to ask my wife to come in here and take care of the rest, because it just looked awful. Don't even sweat that. It'd be like that. You can't. I am impressed by any individual who can shave their head bald and be by themselves. That's insane. That's insane to me.
Oh yeah,
insane.
Do you have any hats? Well, I know you have the wig, the Danny DeVito wig.
You saw the Danny DeVito wig.
Oh yes, no, that I very much agreed with the. It's the same picture.
Right.
Do you have any others though? Any other wigs or hats that you sort of?
In fairness, I wasn't planning to shave my head today, but looking out for my friends, I gotta do what I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? So solidarity and all that. So like, I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna shave the head today, call it a day. And now I'm realizing quickly that we are entering the summer of which I live. It is getting hotter, and I have 2 hats to my name. So it's a bit of the Wild West out here. I'm going to do what I got to do. Luckily for me, my hair grows out fairly quickly. But my God, Jay, please plan ahead if you do this. Don't be like me. Plan ahead. Hey, for those of you listening, plan ahead. Be smart. Be smarter than I. Thank you.
Definitely don't want a sunburnt head. That would not be a good time.
Yeah, that's the issue I'm running into right now. Is the trees are beginning to blossom and bloom, and the petals are falling, and it is a lovely experience. That being said, the sun is out, and I have a very bald head right now. So be smarter than I. That's all I ask. Just maybe invest in like 1 or 2 perhaps wigs or hats or ball caps. All smart ideas. I am currently having to protect my bald head from the elements, which is not ideal, but what are you gonna do, right? What are you gonna do?
That's so it goes. But yeah, like you said, you'll make it work. Just yes, if you are planning on doing that, make sure you have a wig or a hat or 2 available.
Yeah. Yes.
Now
Please,
you mentioned
you.
going outside and doing thing that in the VTuber community is perhaps rare of fabled touching grass.
Yeah, I do try my best to touch grass. I'm a big advocate for traveling, touching grass, exploring the world, adventuring, etc. I haven't been able to do it lately due to the the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I can't imagine why people wouldn't be traveling and going out and about in the last 3 years.
If you were from the Midwest of the United States, of which I am from, that wouldn't be a huge issue apparently. But for me, who respects the lives of others, I do in fact stay aside until it's applicable and safe. I'm a huge, I love going outside. I love going exploring. I'm going to go on a mini trip this year. I think one of the best things you can do in this life, weirdly, this is my personal opinion, so if you don't believe this, that's fine, is to explore and try new foods. I'm a huge food advocate. I love good food. I love good food.
That I'm not someone who has like a super refined palate. We sort of discussed this actually prior to the show that I can appreciate good food, but my big thing is I will try anything once so long as you can assure me that it will not cause me bodily harm to do so.
And even then, I'll kind of dip my toes in the water. I mean, like, listen, like I'm with you though. Like you are more open than most who don't really like appreciate the fact that like, oh, you may never try this thing again, right? I have tried many a dish that I hate and many a dish that I love, and I sincerely think that one of the biggest parts of traveling is trying the cuisine of the aforementioned location, which is I love food, and my goodness, my gracious, my gosh, I love food.
Yeah,
dog, Jay, I'm not sure you're aware by now, based on my mini at TikTok. I would eat. There are a few things that I wouldn't eat. You'd be hard pressed to count on your hands how many things I wouldn't eat compared to things I would eat. I love food. So, and one of the best indicators of different areas, different locations, different geographic moments is food, the cuisine, the things that you get, the things that you try. And I think that if you can really experience those things, anything else after is easy. If you can eat a deep fried spider, you can go on an adventure in the outback. You know what I'm saying?
I think it'd be a lot easier to eat a deep fried spider than go on an adventure in the outback because adventuring in the outback requires preparation. All I need for a deep fried spider is if a chef has put it in front of me, that's all I need. But
you say that until it rolls up in front of you and you're like, wow, I don't want to eat this. And they're like, oh, come on. What are you going to do, not eat it? I'm like, what point?
As long as it's not still wiggling, I'm fine.
You're going to have to get past that point in your mind real quick. There are many of food that still wiggle much after it's been cooked. So you got to get past that real quick.
Okay, I'll rephrase that. As long as I can be assured that the reason for its wiggling is not because it is still alive.
Right. So I'm not saying that I've ever had this and it's still wiggling. But I've had a deep fried spider in Jamaica. That was where I had a deep fried spider. I don't recommend it, but that was the one time I had it. I've had many a cricket and bug in my life.
Yeah, I've had several crickets, a cicada.
Yeah, those are. So I feel like once you eat a bug or two in your life, you're chilling. Like, what else are you gonna eat that's like bad, right?
That it's just a little bit crunchy and it can taste kind of weird. But honestly, usually you're not just eating a raw cricket. Usually it's prepared with some sort of sauce or spices that it becomes a template for different flavors, and that it's then sort of the consistency. And yeah, it has a bit of a crunch, but there are other things that you can eat that have a crunch. It's mostly just the mental barrier of, oh, this is a bug.
Like, once you get past the fact that you're eating a thing that is outside your societal norms of chicken, beef, and what is it, chicken, beef, and fish, once you get past societal norms and you are able to get past that and mentally breach that barrier, the world opens up. Like, what are you going to eat that's much weirder than a goddamn, I don't know, cricket or a spider or a scorpion? Like, not much.
Yeah.
You'll likely eat an alligator or a kangaroo or a snake, or a frog, of which case, like,
yeah, frog just looks like it's tiny chicken when it's prepared.
I promise you, for those listening, frog legs taste better than chicken.
Oh yeah.
You just have to try them. I promise you. And that's the thing.
But they look like chicken legs. They just look like tiny little chicken legs.
Right. Exactly. And I emphasize this point because there's a lot of folks that are like, oh, I would never try this. I would never try that. I'm like, you have to try. If you can try one thing, you can do it all. And I think that a lot of folks are willing to put their beliefs of like, oh, I would never eat a scorpion because it's icky. And it's like, well, what makes it icky? Oh, it's the way that it crawls. It's like, all right, valid, sure, I understand that. But have you tried it? And it's like, once you try a thing and you eat the scorpion, even if you hate the scorpion, you can still try other things. You'd be more willing to eat a spider. You're more willing to eat a cricket. You're more willing to eat a frog. You're more willing to eat a scorpion. They're like, yeah.
Deer jerky, gator jerky, that when you prepare it, it looks like any other meat.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And
there are so many. And what frustrates me, and I acknowledge, listen, I'm not here to do on the people who like, I don't want to eat spider. I get that. I totally get that. Do not misinterpret. I am saying simply, there are people who will see things and be like, I want to eat that. And they'll hear, oh, it's this, and say, well, no. It's like, well, you were down to eat it a moment ago. What's the issue now, right? life is worth the adventure. I sincerely think that you should try things unless you are sincerely like phobic of the thing. I get an arachnophobe not wanting to eat a spider.
Yeah, that is
Jay,
fair.
I get that.
And I'll
But
be honest, like, would I prefer to eat a spider, a tarantula, prepared in a way that I cannot recognize it as a spider? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not arachnophobic. I don't enjoy looking at
I don't wanna
spiders,
eat a
though.
spider!
And if I had the option of, I can have this local cuisine prepared in a way that I do versus don't recognize it,
Yeah.
I'd probably choose to not recognize it. But if the way that it's being prepared is, yes, this is recognizably a spider, I'll still eat it.
But I won't be as stoked about it. And like, I don't know.
That's That's the thing, that I might not be as stoked, but I'll be like, okay, here we go. Let's try this thing out.
I believe that there are many folk who exist on the diet of chicken nuggets, which, like, in the 2023, there are a lot of folks who just live off of chicken nuggets and breakfast sandwiches, like Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwiches. Pardon my slurring. It's hard for me to talk these days, but and it's like I would love to share the love and passion for food that I have. Because if I had continued to neglect my growth as a person, I used to, when I first had Indian food, I, no cap, had to leave the 5-star restaurant because I was going to be sick. So I tried it years later and loved it. One of my favorite things is Indian food these days. And it's like, why deny yourself something that is effectively wonderful because of preconceived notions or opinions? You know what I'm saying?
The only reason that I have a slight problem with some Indian food is I have a mediocre spice tolerance. And Indian food, they know how to do spice. That, if you're offered a 1 to 4 scale of spice at a Indian restaurant, that is not the same 1 to 4 scale you're getting at a Japanese restaurant or something like that. It's very different. And that I just know, okay, I want to have some of the spice because it is such a unique flavor. I just know I need to keep myself at the 1, 2, do not go 3, 4, but that's just because my palate will not allow it. That different people will have different tolerances. I wish I could take it more, but that's one of the things that you learn. And that you find out, all right, if I need just to have it on a smaller scale, that's still fine. That do not harm your body in the name of trying new food. But at the same time, if you can find a way to turn those knobs to make it so that it is workable, work with the knobs.
In the same vein, though, I used to be one who the hottest thing you could have was Tabasco, right? And then over the years, I have evolved quickly into being one that was like, oh, I am a huge advocate for ghost pepper, like peppers, or the worst, most spicy meatball, mamma mia. And like, I think that a thing that you've tried, if I can reach out to anyone here, a thing that you tried 10 years ago will not taste the same as it does now. Please give it a college try. Please go out and try the thing that you hate. I promise your taste buds have changed, and you might love the thing you used to hate. I used to hate Indian food. I love it now. I used to hate Korean food. Love it now. Like, your palate will change.
I operate usually off of a 5-year rule for even the foods that I have just hated. If it's been 5 years since I last tried it, I will try it again. And the same goes with spice, that I don't work on like a 5-year rule for spice, but just, every so often, because I have certainly noticed that over the years, my spice tolerance has increased, and it's still relatively mediocre, don't get me wrong. But every so often I'll be like, all right, I usually go with the 1 or 2. I'm going to get a 3 today, see how it goes. I'm not going to necessarily jump in the deep end and say, all right, give me the hottest thing you have to try to ruin me, because I know that's a bad idea. But I keep trying to increment myself and see, all right, can I handle a bit more now? Can I handle a bit more now? And that what I can handle today is certainly more than I could handle 5 years ago. And 5 years from now, who knows?
So in the inverse of that, though, I was much in the position where I'm like, oh, ruin me, kill me. I want the worst spice you can get. Because I got to a point where I could handle, like, the top 10 spices of the world fairly easily. Granted, if you give me, like, 10 chicken wings with the worst spice, I would suffer a little bit, right? But, like, I could really handle my spice. And there's a certain point where eventually you're like, well, what's the point? Why am I can't even taste Tabasco or sriracha.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I want taste, not pain.
Exactly. And this is another thing I want to advocate to those who are listening. There's a certain point where you realize pain is not worth it. I think taste overrides pain, and you could have the hottest hot sauce in the world, and if it tastes awful, your dish will taste awful. But if you have a really good hot sauce or spice that hits the taste buds in a really real way, it may not be spicy, but goddamn, will that really affect the goddamn flavor of that dish. And that is why I have slowed down on my crusade for the spiciest stuff I can have, and instead have calmed down and been like, all right, I want some spice, but I want to enjoy the spice of which it is. That's what I want.
Yes, that's exactly where I am, and it's just, like I said, even just trying that little bit more and figuring it out, because everyone's palate, everyone's spice tolerance is going to be different. That there's plenty of people out there that should not be trying top 10 hot wings and the 9 million Scoville sauces, and that you will just have a bad time. You may get physically ill from that. Don't harm yourself, but experiment. That, like I said, my only real qualification for food is, can the chef give me reasonable assurance that this will not cause me bodily harm? And even then, I say reasonable assurance.
What point is that So, I was stationed in Japan for many a year, and excuse me, one of the things they offer is a pufferfish. You can eat a pufferfish in Japan. Now, you have to be served by a licensed professional.
Oh, yeah.
Because pufferfish will kill you if they are prepared incorrectly. Now, at what point, despite the qualifications, are you like, this is too dangerous for me?
I think it would then depend on the chef, really. That for pufferfish, for something like that, where I know that if prepared wrong, that there is real bodily harm at risk, that I'm going to be more selective of the chefs that I will accept pufferfish from. If I go to a 5-star restaurant in Japan, I will eat their pufferfish, because I know that this is what they are trained to do and that they serve many of these people a day. That's the other thing. Just, is this someone who has served this dish many, many times before? That if it's something that can be dangerous and they've served it for 10 years at their restaurant, and I know that this place is still open, they haven't killed anybody, that in and of itself is going to speak enough confidence to me that I'm going to be like, okay, yeah.
I'll play the space. So you're presented with an opportunity. You have to go to one of 2 restaurants, one of which is a 5-star chain restaurant serving the pufferfish. The other is a hole-in-the-wall, no star, because no one goes there except for locals, pufferfish enthusiasts. Like, they've been trained, they have their certificate. Which one do you trust more, the 5-star or the 1-star? Well, not 1-star. 0-star, because no one's gone there except for the locals.
But this is not a new hole in the wall. That this hole in the wall has been here for a decade.
Let's say sure, for argument's sake, sure. Which one do you trust more?
Would I trust?
Would you trust a 5-star restaurant of which
in terms of very specific phrasing? Yes. Which do I trust more? I trust the 5-star chef more, because they're usually going to be having the big oversight in terms of like health inspectors that the hole in the wall aren't going to have. However, if you are saying that I see these 2 restaurants and have the option of which do I want to go to, and I can only go to one, I will choose the hole in the wall.
Nice.
That there is a difference in trust, but at that point in time, the difference is negligible. But I think that naturally, if one, is this bigger restaurant with the bigger reputation, that they are going to be that microscopically more stringent. So by technicality of your question, specifically the word trust, that's why I say the 5-star, but I would go to the hole in the wall.
That's fair. That's where I'm at with it too. That's where I'm with it too. I mean, like, I'm goddamn, I'm enthusiast for hole in the walls. So there's that.
Yeah, that I'm not going to take pufferfish from some student that is just learning how to do it.
Some guy.
That do I trust the student attending a 5-star cooking academy or the hole in the wall who's prepared it? I trust the hole in the wall then.
Right. That's semantics. That's semantics, though. I feel like at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, I would probably go for the hole in the wall, but I'm also a hole in the wall enthusiast. I've had many a good dish.
That if you can find good hole in the walls, and it's such a difficult thing, because usually if you are able to find a hole in the wall, it means it's no longer a hole in the wall. That it's almost a catch-22.
Touche. Once it gets so popular, is it really a hole in the wall anymore?
yeah, it's that catch-22 of being able to find the local spot, and that if you as a non-local are able to find it, how many other non-locals? And usually the best
Shit,
way to
Jay, that's
do
a
that
touche.
is to never look in a publication, never look on a website for the best local spots. That if you have a local friend, not a publication, not a blogger, they will know the actual holes in the wall.
I'm a huge fan of that touche because that's a good point. Realistically, at what certain point is a hole in the wall the hole in the wall? If you can Google a hole in the wall, it's not a hole in the wall, is it? So,
No.
like, that's a good point. Like, God, take Jay's advice. If you know a friend in the area, please ask them. That is the heat you need to bring because that is like, that'll get you that good stuff. 100% of the time, the best places I've ever had in the world have been from genuine, oh, I know a place, people. 100%. 100%. God dang, that's a good point, Jay. God dang.
Yeah, it becomes that double-edged sword of hole in the walls become mainstream because they do their stuff very well. And to be honest,
Yes.
I'm happy for them. It's that, like I said, sort of double-edged sword. It's kind of sad to see that it is no longer that secret anymore, but at the same time, for the business owner, that's a very exciting thing when they can be recognized for all the work that they put in, being unrecognized for potentially years and years and years.
Yes, which I think is an excellent point. And if you have a chance, by the way, I'm not saying take a chance at every restaurant, but I'm saying, like, if a local tells you go here, perhaps listen to the local. Because 9 times out of 10, I promise you, as someone who's traveled many a place, that is the place to go to. I promise you.
Absolutely. Well, Papa, we've been at this for about 2.5 hours now, and you already had a super long stream today. You were up for like 4 hours already playing Pokemon and several other games. So I'm going to start winding us down. I have just a couple last questions that I ask all my guests. The first is, do you have any goals for the rest of 2023 that we are now, a little less than halfway through April, still the first half of the year, whether it be something with a model, it might be a project, it could be numbers, or it might not be numbers. Do you have any goals for the year?
So I don't typically focus on numbers or growth or something like that. I do focus on like goofball-ish ideas. Most notably, WeebCon 2023 just happened, and they had a retinue of wonderful VTubers as cardboard cutouts. And a big bit that I am now embracing is my goal is to I want to be one of those cardboard cutouts. I don't listen. I'm not saying I'm a prolific VTuber. I'm not saying I am a poppy fur, as we say in the furry industry. I am saying that I would love to be a goddamn cutout because it's hilarious. Imagine walking to a anime convention, seeing 100 anime cutouts, and then just one weird fluffy dog person, and it's like just in the background, like
you'd certainly stand out.
Right, and you're like, what is this? What is this furry lad? What is this dude doing in the midst of my waifus? That'd be hilarious.
Now, does it count if a fan of yours, makes a custom standee, or does it have to be that a company has set up their booth with a standee of you?
God, number 2 would be hilarious because imagine being the company that signs on with someone like me. That'd be very, very funny. I will take number 1, but number 2 is the ideal. If I can have someone that is I am directly associated with, that'd be fantastic. But if my botched cardboard cutout appears in some pictures, that'd be very, very funny. Outside of that, I'm here to entertain and bring joy, so I'm not really worried about how many folks I do or do not have in that regard.
And just, gosh, from that, we already covered a couple things that we didn't have a chance to discuss tonight, and that if you have not followed, and if you're not keeping up with PapaMutt already, please do yourself a favor. That, we didn't even really get to talk about content creation as a whole, about, the furry community, which is, very obviously part of your brand. But, maybe conversations for another day. That it is not difficult for one of the best just chatting streamers in the world, PapaMutt, to do.
That's me.
Yep.
I've been told that quite a bit. I'm just chatting streamer. I do play video games, I promise. There's no just chatting on my stream, I promise. There's only video games. Only video games. Trust.
Yes, absolutely. And then the last question I ask all my guests is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not the question of what is a VTuber, but different people get different things from it. I've had folks say it lets me get in touch with their inner child, or it lets me be something I can't be in real life. Others have had a more perhaps clinical answer of it's a mask that I wear, that I don't necessarily have a deep connection to my model, but I would not want to create content without it because I think it's an incredible tool and I love what it lets me do. And everything in between and beyond is valid, but different people get different things. So for you, PapaMutt, what does being a VTuber mean to you?
In my case, I am I'm sorry, those of you watching or hearing this, I am a furry VTuber. I'm a dog person. So being able to be part of the furry community or the community in general allows me to kind of express myself in a way that I couldn't do traditionally as a flesh tuber or as a person tuber, because I'm able to present myself. Now, don't get it twisted. I don't really mind these days. I used to mind, but not so much anymore. If people know what I look like,
I mean, you posted a picture of yourself just earlier today.
Exactly. I'm not really worried about these days because people are super, super supportive. What's important to me is I'm able to present myself as a figure that people can come in, see instinctively, who you can associate with. You're like, I like this guy, I like this lovely dog dad, and I can bring them joy and happiness and satisfaction. And I at the end of the day, being a VTuber for me is being able to be a medium in which people don't want to necessarily watch IRL content, but want to still feel safe and calm and secure and have fun and have a good time and just forget about their day-to-day problems with me. And that brings such serotonin to know that there are people who sincerely look to me as someone who can bring them a smile on a hard day. And that is why I VTube. That is why I stream. So I can bring the hard days away from those who are having a rough one, and know that I am a beacon of comfort and support in an otherwise storm of doo-doo, because this world that we live in can become sometimes kind of crappy. Can be.
I always ask that question last because while I never know exactly what someone will say, the answers always make sense. And if someone has tuned into any number of your streams, or even just the 2.5 hours that I've been fortunate enough to talk with you tonight, that it very much fits. That it's something that you have right up there on your Twitter bio and in your channel description of that you are the comfy dog dad VTuber. Like you said, you're very visibly, very obviously a member of the furry community, that you've been to furry conventions. Like I said, something we didn't get to discuss today, maybe another time. But if not, people can just go to your stream and you'll talk about it there, and you'll talk their ear off, and you're going to have a good time if you tune into a PapaMutt stream. So legitimately, Papa, thank you so much for stopping by this evening. Do you have something that you'd like us to raid?
I do. I'm a little biased, granted. There is a certain squid of which I always am a fan of watching. She is a Do you know who this is?
I'm guessing it's Mari.
It may be Radical Mari. Radical Mari is a fantastic squid of which I'm very biased. She's my everything. She's absolutely helped me through the hardest times. She is the one who inspired me to do what I do, and without her, I would not be where I am, 100%. So any opportunity I get, I will absolutely shout out the lovely squid of which I care so deeply for.
Absolutely, and just make sure I have the spelling right. It's just RADICALMARY. There, or sorry,
Radical
MARI,
baby.
Yeah, and no underscores or anything like that.
Nope. Radical Mari.
Want to make sure we send them all to the right place. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry, Ren. Yeah, you got here just at the end,
no,
but we're gonna send them over to Mari.
I'm sorry. Next time. We'll do it next time.
Yes.
Because I feel as though, listen, full all cards on the table. Your boy is over here on the tail end of a very, very long stream. He's very, very tired. I had to tell Jay here, like, hey, I'm dying. Your boy's out here dying. So listen, if y'all want me to run it back, I'm sure Jay will be let know. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and you're absolutely going to be getting an invitation to my 3rd anniversary charity marathon, which it's several months off, but everybody always gets an invite to that, and I would love to have you back for that occasion. And I hope we have the chance to talk more, whether it be on my channel or in other venues in the future. It's been, like I said, an absolute layup of a show. This has been so much fun. We were able to get into a lot of topics that I don't normally talk about.
But we didn't
Gathering,
and
there were so many more that we didn't get to.
We're going on. We're teetering towards hour 3, and we didn't even get to talk about like a tenth of the things we initially planned to talk about. So,
but so it goes. But every conversation we had tonight was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, folks, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you got here at the start or just got here now, you can follow me here on Twitch and on Twitter. It's just Vtuber Talk, both places. And if not following me, be sure to follow PapaMutt. His links are here at the bottom of the screen. They're in the channel description. If you're on Twitch, it'll be in the description on YouTube as well. Hi, YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.
Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to add that bell notification so you can watch the upcoming Vtuber Talks. Because without the hey, that's good content, right? 3 hours of VTuber Talks. Come on, you like VTubers?
Yeah.
You like talking? Come on, 3 hours of it. Add that notification bell, baby. Let's go. What I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you for the plug. I appreciate it.
That's how I do, baby. That's how I do.
Well, we're going to be heading out and sending you on over to Radical Mari, so be sure to let them know that Papa sent you. I will see you all next time. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody.